If you want like a long-term investment for mid, Orianna is your go-to. This champ will literally never not be at least A tier.
I'm Nathan Mott from We Teach League. We help over 3,000 members every day improve at League of Legends. Today I sit down with Shok, one of the best Orianna players you'll find in solo queue, currently playing in Korea at 1200 LP. We're going to be covering Orianna's best item builds, how to play versus ranged and melee matchups, and how to structure your mid game for more consistency. Let's get into the details. Shok, let's start off with Orianna's build. What are the stats we're looking for, and how does this build, or the way that you build Orianna, align with your view of the champion, the champ identity with Orianna? The first thing I'm sort of noticing here is some games you're going phase rush, some games you're going Arcane Comet.
Yeah, so runes probably are the most important thing when it comes to Ori's build. So basically, the phase rush page definitely scales better. Like one of Orianna's big weaknesses is that she is mobile. Phase rush will make you, much stronger in the team fight, much stronger in the side lane, but it does come at the cost of like a much weaker laning phase. So what I like to do is I pretty much always go phase rush into melee champs because most melee champs have like enough sustain that you can't really poke them out anyway. Into range champs, if I think the matchup's going to be very, very contested, to the point where like if I don't have Comet, I'm just going to lose, or if if I think I can get a really, really big lead by running Comet, then I will probably go for it. There are certain matchups like, Cinder, for example, where if you don't have Comet resolve and they do, you're going to get, it's not going to matter what scaling you have. You're just going to be too far behind. So basically, if you can grade phase rush, I think you should, but you might need Comet for the stronger laning phase.
So if you were to percentage it wise, so this game against a Zia Comet makes sense. Phase rush, Yone, melee, as you said. Phase rush versus Hui. So what's the thought process here? It seems like the range matchups you're more, so the majors you're versus and building Comet. Is that
Yeah,
just Hui is a
so
bit harder to bully?
yeah, I mean, this one I would say is kind of up to you. Like, if you want to really hard pressure the laning phase, you can go Comet here. Like I said, I think that if you can get away with phase rush, it's really, really good. And Hui is not particularly good in lane, so I would say this one's like more personal preference. I think phase rush into the three like melee frontline there, like Taric, Pantheon, and Renekton, makes you really, really strong both in the lane and in the side lane. So it's kind of personal preference, but I do think phase rush is not only easier to play, but also scales better. So I like to greet it.
I see. So you're also not thinking just about the matchup, it's also the game holistically as well. Like, these champs are going to be trying to get on you and you want to kite them.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. And then, so I'm seeing some differences here. So this is the phase rush, and you go legend, you go the alacrity tree second, and then
Yep.
you're going some bone plating. You're already switching up the rune. Sometimes you're going to resolve. Is that what's match up here? Yeah. So explain the secondary tree sort of thought processes here.
Yeah, so the resolve you'll take either into difficult mage matchups, so again, very contested matchups like Syndra or Victor or something where you're gonna need extra power just to get through the laning phase, assuming again that maybe it's more of a high-elo thing where people are kind of optimizing for early game, because if you were against something like Syndra with first strike, you could probably get away with not having this. But I find in high elos that every Syndra I play against is taking all early game, and if I don't have all early game, it's gonna be really tough. Now, this is like you could maybe get away with not having resolve in these matchups, but where you absolutely need resolve is against melee. It's like if you're against a melee, particularly a melee assassin, you're going to need bone plating. So, a Silas or a Fizz or even certain range champs like LeBlanc, bone plating is really good. And off the top of my head, there's very few melees you wouldn't take resolve into. Maybe something like Galio, but bone plating, especially against champs that don't have a way of proccing it or have to use a long cooldown in order to proc it. Like LeBlanc has a 15-second cooldown on a W to proc it. It's really, really worth it to have bone plating in those matchups. And if you're against anything else, basically, you can just go precision.
Okay. And the precision runes that you will go will be, was a precision one? This one here. This is versus Katarina here. Is this your go-to legend haste cut down?
Yeah, I pretty much always go this. Now, you can swap cut down to presence of mind if you want. It doesn't really make a difference for the laning phase, but it will make managing mana in team fights a little better. So if you find that you're going Umala on Ori, you probably should have it. And I do think I notice a lot when I'm coaching Oriannas that a lot of them do, waste mana, for example, like spam Wing around the map. So you might find it easier to run POM. But I do think that cut down is better if you're, yeah, I don't know, if you're a little more familiar and you use your abilities maybe just a tiny bit better.
So tier plus mana plus presence of mind, you need all that for mana issues. Like that's a lot of mana. I
Well,
feel. Is
you
that, do you think
don't.
it's overkill?
Well, I mean, it's kind of yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, it depends. Like, I'd say you build Seraphs more for the shield as opposed for the mana. The mana is nice, but the Seraph shield is really, really useful if you're against champions that have a lot of threat onto you in the team fight or the side lane. So if you look at this game where I'm against Katarina, Viego, Renekton, so the three people I'm interacting with, so Renekton and Katarina are both like fairly threatening on the side lane, and me being just that little bit tankier makes a big difference. And then also Viego and Katarina are both like looking for that reset, right? So having that tiny bit of extra health, I think, is really, really useful. And you'll notice that game, I went Leandry as well, despite it not being like a literal S tier Leandry game. It's just another good way to get health without really compromising my damage too much.
And when you say an S tier Leandri's game, you mean like really tanky champs to burn percentage health. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, like yeah, if you see just anything that builds like Rod of Ages or double mask builds or yeah, tank supports, not even so much tank tops because okay, so one issue you can have is that if you play against like a Cassante or something, sometimes you need the percent magic pen from Criploom or Void before you go Leandry just because they have so much magic resist. But basically, if they have health and not magic resist, then Leandry becomes like super valuable.
I see. Okay, so it sounds like your decision making here is like you're switching between sort of like Archangel's first item. This game here was a sorry, the Seraph's, yeah, first item. I think I saw some Blackfire Torch ones. Blackfire Torch, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So explain sort of the thought process. Like, okay, if we actually just look at a bunch of these games here, tell me which scoreline you think is like a good stock standard build. Like Orianna players should just like learn how to play the champ with, or do you really need to learn how to adapt between Seraph's games and Blackfire Torch games?
I would say if you're not sure, you should just play Seraphs. Like Seraphs is easier and you can't really go wrong with it. Blackfire is just like a slightly greedier option where if you don't think the shield makes a difference for team fighting or the side laning, but it's really I honestly think it's kind of splitting hairs. Like if you want to play Seraphs every game, that's totally fine. I
Yep.
probably wouldn't play Blackfire every game because there are games where you're gonna need that Seraphs. So yeah, Blackfire is a greedy option, but Seraph's nothing wrong with it. And I actually used to play Seraph's Ori literally every game, and I don't think it's a problem.
So this build here, would you say this is a stock standard build? We're going Crypt Bloom second into Death Cap. Is this a good standard build,
Yeah,
or
so
is that
I
more
unfortunately
specific?
don't think there's like a stock standard second item. I do think it has to be somewhat situational.
Yep.
So Criploom is really, really good if you've got more than one AP on your team and you suspect they're going to build Magic Resist. So that game I have a Kennen, and they also have a Cassante, so there's a really high chance Magic Resist gets built. If you don't need Criploom, you can go for Leandry. Again, if
I'm
you
seeing a
need
lot of
health,
Leandras. Yeah.
yeah, Leandry's a pretty good item, but you do have to be careful because if the health is useless, then sometimes Leandry is like a pretty big damage loss. Like it's important that the health is valuable as well. You can go for Shadow Flame or Storm Surge if you are against like lots of squishy champions, and you can just like blow them up basically. I suppose if you're not sure what to buy, Leandry or Crippler probably are the ways to go. But I do think you should be thinking about yeah, like potentially flat pen items. Sometimes you can even go like Death Cap second, depending on if you have like a high stack Dark Seal and stuff. But I like Seraph Leandry or Seraph Criploom as you can't go wrong with these.
So your last four games, you went Blackfire like every game here. You could build again Seraphs in these games. Like, what's the thought process with Blackfire these games?
Yeah, I think so. So I think that in this game, okay, well the this
Which
game
one? This
the
one here?
first one, yeah. So the one
Yeah.
against Azir, I was kind of thinking like, okay, I beat Azir in the side lane, like basically no matter what, and I think I'd lose to Fiora basically no matter what. And I wasn't super worried about the Hecarim, but honestly, that might have been a mistake. So if you went Seraph this game, like again, it's totally fine. I was kind of greeting, but I mean, I think you could argue it was a mistake. Like maybe the Seraphs was better.
Okay, and what about this game, for example, here? What's the thought process with this one? You get to Yone. You obviously took Phase Rush because it's the melee. What's the thought process here?
Yeah, so I actually don't remember this game super well, but Seraphs in general is not particularly good against Yone because he's not a burst champ, like he has DPS. So like having an extra 300 shield, if you're against a Fizz or something, like the thing is like once Fizz runs out of damage, like he's useless, right? He's gone. But against a DPS champ like Yon, especially with Borg. Like, is the 300 shield making a difference? Not really. So I was just itemizing greedily. And I think from what I remember, the Echo was like really, really behind. I think the Zyra just ran over him. So I wasn't worried about getting assassinated by Echo in the team fight or anything.
I saw a couple of your games 2 weeks ago. You were going Rod of Aegis like every game. Is this you cooking, or what's your thoughts on
Yeah, so I was
this?
experimenting. I think that there are certain matchups. Basically, like Catalyst is a really, really overpowered component. If you need to like neutralize the landing phase, Catalyst is super broken. But the problem is this build is extremely slow, and I think even though Ori like scales well, it's mainly like in the early to mid game that Ori is like at her strongest. Like she scales well late game, but only if you're actually fed. So honestly, I don't really like the build. Maybe you could go Catalyst against Assassins if you really need it, but I think if you can get away with Seraph, you should. But yeah, if you played like an unplayable matchup and you don't think you could live, you can just go a Catalyst and either upgrade it to Rod of Ages or just buy Catalyst and sit on it and not upgrade it and just keep it the whole game.
Okay, that's probably oh, your ideal first base. Is this just stock standard? You're looking for Lost Chapter. Is that a big reference point? You're trying to get this first item, first base.
I would say
This is a bit
it
different.
depends a little bit. So yeah, no, it depends a little bit based on the matchup. I think that it's really important that you have at least one chapter component on your first base because I think going for chapter first base is kind of unrealistic, but getting it second base is really, really key. So most of the time I'll go like, boots am term refill or dark seal am term refill or whatever, right? Something like that. Depending on what other things I need, like boots can be good for against skill shots or against kiting melees. Refillable is just giga broken, so that's an item like you always want to be thinking about. Dark Seal, best AP item in the game, so like want to get that at some point as well. Most of it is just kind of when convenient. I guess the one other exception would be if you're planning on building tier, you don't necessarily need a chapter component. Like for example, I wouldn't go boots Dark Seal because that's going to make it so you won't have chapter second base. But you can go tier Dark Seal because it's less important to have chapter if you're going tier because you've already got some mana.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah,
I
so
see
that
here.
game I felt like.
So, but this is an insane base, right? You obviously
Yeah,
absolutely
I
insane
think
lane
I
phase right
can't
there.
remember what happened there. Yeah.
But this is more stock standard if you're building Seraphs. You're
Yeah.
going the tier, okay.
Yeah.
And are you looking to get your tier 2 boots before your first item, or is that just situational again? Like, is Sork Shoes the only boots you're going as well?
Kind of situational. Like I think that especially in skill shot heavy matchups, having boots earlier can be nice, but at the same time, yeah, like completing first item is really good too. The way I would see it is upgrading boots is the biggest spike you can get in the moment. And so like if you need that early power, particularly in again contested matchups or whatever, probably is worth upgrading. But overall, if you can delay boots to after or after first item, I probably would. As for which boots to buy, if you're buying boots early, it should almost always be Sork Shoes because that like Magic Pen, especially early game, is such a huge spike. If you're buying boots later, then it should probably be Swiftness because at that point the Magic Pen's like fallen off a little bit. But honestly, it doesn't matter too much. Like if you want to go Swiftness or Sorks or CDR, even I think it's kind of fine. I don't think it's a huge deal.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your match history here, Shock, I'm seeing Sorks every game. There's not a single
Yeah,
Swifty
there's
you've
like
gone. So,
one lucidity in there, I think. Yeah.
yeah. So, practical wise, it's mainly going to be Sorks.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's see if the community agrees with your way that
This will
you
be
build
interesting.
Orianna. Yeah, so this is Emerald Plus, mid lane Orianna. First item, pick rate, 50% almost on Ludens. Then Staff was 35%. Blackfire is barely even touched, 3%. So what's going on here, Shock? What's the thought process here? What are they doing here? What are your thoughts on Ludens?
Yeah, so I think Luden's is very powerful, but very situational. And it's kind of weird actually that's bald so much. So the thing with Luden's is that Luden's is really, really strong when you buy it. And it also gains a lot of value if you're against like many range champions. Like if you're playing against a comp that has like 3 or 4 range champs, and especially if you just want to spike early, it's really good. And it's also really strong when it's paired with Shadow Flame. So just having like the full burst of Luden Shadowflame or Luden Storm Surge, if you're against like 4 squishy range champs, is really, really good. Now, I find in my games that this is very rare. Like I basically always see melee support. I basically always see melee
Mm.
jungle, melee top. So, like, for me, just the number of Luden's games is pretty, yeah, it's pretty uncommon, to be honest. And so I just find myself not really going for it. Maybe I could buy it a tiny bit more, but you probably would notice more in lower elo that there would be more. Like, I think range
Range.
supports.
Yeah, range support's
Yeah,
way more popular. Yeah, like the
exactly. Yeah.
Luxes and
So,
Zyras and stuff.
exactly. Yeah. So, if you want to play Ludens and lower elo, I definitely don't think it's bad. I would just be careful. Like, the more melees on the enemy team, the higher value Blackfire gets. And the more threat there is to you in a team fight, the higher value Seraph gets. So Luden's, it's ultra greedy, great against like squishy team comps. I just find I don't verse that very often.
So why is 3% of people, what no one values Blackfire? Why is it you think the community, Orianna community, does not like this item?
Yeah, I suspect the reason it doesn't get valued is because like I think most people kind of see Blackfire as like a champ for or sorry, an item for champ that have like damage over time abilities, and Orianna doesn't have any of those. But what Ori does gain from Blackfire is lots of haste, right? Like it's got more haste on it than Luden's, which is quite nice. And also, Ori's cooldowns are so low that they're almost like having a damage over time ability. Like you'll get to the point where
Mm.
your Q is on a
Mm.
2-second cooldown and you can just tap it on them constantly. Now, it definitely does lose value against range champs, right? Because you cannot Q a range champ every 2 seconds. But if you're kiting out a melee or whatever, and you'll see this in some of the VODs, like you actually can just spam your abilities nonstop and keep the burn ticking the whole time.
Okay, moving on to boots. Surprisingly, people are really liking, I mean, it's still low, 14% picking up to the cities, but Merc Treads. What do you think about Merc Treads here, Shock? 12% of the
Yeah, so
time.
Merc Treads used to be insanely broken. I think nowadays are pretty bad. So the thing is that, and a lot of people get this wrong, Merc Treads don't give any extra MR for upgrading them. Like you get 20 MR just for buying the 400 gold null magic. So the only point to upgrade Mercs is for tenacity. And the thing is, like, as a backline mage, most of the time you're not threatened by CC. Or if you are, there's probably a way to like dodge it or outposition it. Now, sometimes there are certain champs where you just need it, like against Lysandra, for example, it can be kind of good. It can be good against like Sejuani, possibly, depending on like how strong your frontline is. Leon is like another example. So there are times where you can consider it, but the way I would see it is if you can get away with not buying mercs, you should, because it's a massive investment into defensive stats that most of the time you don't need, or you can just outplay. And it's a huge power trough. Like I see a lot of people, buy the first item, they're really strong, they're looking to fight, and then they
Mm.
immediately go and buy mercs, and they just 4 kills worth of gold down the drain, and they go back to being useless.
So you said that the second item is something that's situational, that you really situationally pick. Looking at your
Yeah.
OPGG here, your build, you're going, it looks like it's pretty even, Shadowflame and Liandry's. You were only really building Liandry's, and I really saw Crypt Bloom. I didn't really see Shadowflame really at all here, but Shadowflame
Yeah,
seems to be like the
I
most
think I built
popular.
it like once or twice lately. But yeah, it's kind of another thing where like you kind of have to know that. Well, there's a few things. Like first off, Shattered Flame, the build path is strong, but only if you can afford it. Like one problem you can run into is if you go say double amp tome, and on your next base you can buy an alternator, but then you can't buy the rod because it's 1200 gold. So you can just end up sitting with like 800, 900 gold in your inventory walking out of base. And then you're kind of like not getting the value out of Shadow Flame. You're playing a build to snowball, and then you're not spending your money. So to buy Shadow Flame, you kind of have to know that you can buy the rod. If you can't buy the rod, you can play Storm Surge instead, which is a weaker item overall, but it has a much stronger build path. It's much easier to buy, which I think is probably why it has a higher win rate, because it's easier to play and it's easier to buy. So that is an option. I like going for the higher damage of Shadow Flame, but you can go Storm Surge if you want.
And I'm seeing like no Crypt Blooms here. Why is people just think that this is the superior Magic Pen item?
Yeah, I think this is honestly just people probably not understanding how good Crippling is. So,
Yeah.
like 30% Magic Pen, you get a lot of value very quickly, right? Like if you're against a target with, let's just say base MR of roughly around 50, right? Like the 30% Magic Pen is already giving you 15 pen, which is more than Shadow Flame. Now, obviously, Shadow Flame's got like the passive on it and it's got more AP and stuff, but if all you cared about was Magic Pen, like just that stat, you actually go Crippling over Shadow Flame, like basically always. And if
I see.
again you're expecting the enemy team to buy magic resist, or if they have, especially a tank or something with a lot already, Crypt Bloom second is pretty much immediately the best item to buy.
Okay, moving on to the third item now. This is always a funny one with AP champs. I recently did one of these with Parbu, and he's so anti ZHONYA'S on Elise because you do no damage compared to Death Cap third item. Is this
Yeah.
the same thing with Orianna?
Yep, I agree. I think ZHONYA'S is pretty trash until later in the game. So the thing is, you basically have to buy 4 items. You must have Death Cap, like non-negotiable. I
Okay.
think most of the time you should go Death Cap third. But for example, if you, I don't know, let's say you went Leandry second, you could go say Crippler third, Death Cap fourth, or you could go Death Cap third, Crippler fourth. But yeah, if you don't have Death Cap in your first 4 items, and ideally first three, you're basically just saying you're going to do no damage. And if you ever needed a ZHONYA, you probably should have bought it second, but I would say that it's better to get your safety from Seraphs and Phase Rush and Resolve and like Leandry HP rather than the ZHONYAs itself. Because, I mean, like Pabu said, ZHONYA is a massive damage loss, so I only ever really consider it last item, like after I've picked up my percent pen, after I've picked up my death cap. It's just too, yeah, I mean, people always say, you don't do damage if you're dead, but with a lot of mage builds, you don't do damage if you're alive either. So
Yeah,
you've got to
that's
make
right.
sure you build damage.
Yeah, so what I guess is that the narrative? Is that the thought process? Like I'm an immobile mage, I'm going to get killed and then I'm not doing damage, so I have to get this item. Is what's the community thought process? Why do people obsessed with this item? Shock.
Yeah, I suspect it's just that, yeah, people honestly just like value, well, yeah, I guess they value living, which is fair, right? And I think if you knew for sure that you were going to die without lasagnas, like realistically, you probably should buy. But I do think that one, there are ways to position better or, be stronger, right? Like have snowballed your early game better or, be playing the side lane better. Or again, you can get your safety from items like Seraph, Leandry, Phase Rush, Resolve, like things that don't compromise your damage so much. And yeah, I think it's like super overbought. Like I don't even think I have a Zonya in my last like 30
No,
games.
I didn't see a single ZHONYA'S. I mean, obviously you could say, it's Korean solo queue games going for 15, 20 minutes, like it's quite quick gameplay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's not even the long games, it's not even on your mind, it looks like, yeah, Shock. You couldn't
Yeah.
care less. In terms of other defensive item, talk to me about Banshees. Like, you said that you're building ZHONYA'S like last item, like the ZHONYA'S, like Banshees. Is that another
Mhm.
thing you consider for a defensive item, or is that like really team comp specific?
Yeah, Banshee it's a very weird item. So Banshee is kind of the opposite of Zonya. Like the Banshee Matter Resist is quite good, but the Banshee Spell Shield is pretty useless. So Banshee is really, really good if the enemy team is heavy on AP because Magic Pen items overall are quite weak and Matter Resist is so overtuned. So you can go Banshee if the enemy team is, yeah, super heavy on AP, especially if they're playing flat pen champs, right? Like if you're against champs like LeBlanc or I don't know, like Kennen or something, as opposed to you probably wouldn't want Banshee versus Zyra, for example, who's building like, I don't know, Leandry Rylai. So it's, yeah, I don't think I've built this in a while because, especially in high-elo, people are very aware that full AP team comps are super trash. But yeah, you could buy this potentially second or fifth against very heavy team compositions.
Another question our listeners are going to ask is, you were saying earlier, Dark Seal is just an amazing item. Are you upgrading to Magi's ever? Does Magi's make sense on Orianna?
It kind of does. So Ori is one of the best champs at farming Dark Seal stacks because like you can just E or W people and you'll almost always get 5 assists even if you don't tag people in the fight. But you do need to be careful because obviously upgrading to Magi's is a pretty big risk. So normally I upgrade to Magi's if I basically if I think I won't die. And so factors that come into that is like, okay, am I playing Phase Rush versus am I playing Comet? Am I playing Seraph for extra safety? Do I have a Blackfire? Do I have Leandry HP? Do I not? Is my flash up or is it down? Like how much point and click do they have? Do they have like Vi or Hecarim or do they have, I don't know, something that's easier to kite, like a Zinzao or something? So I would say if you're not sure, just stay on the Dark Seal because Dark Seal, again, so broken. Magi's is very rewarding, but honestly, it's not really worth the risk. So you have to know it's not a risk if you're going to upgrade it.
And last question here for items, Shock. I see people overvalue building healing reduction across everyone, every role. Like I see Brambles, it's like, oh my god, lots of healing, comps. What's your view on like building anti-heal on Orianna?
Yeah, I think
Morales, yeah.
anti-heal is complete trash. I think that if you're ever gonna buy healing cut, you should just buy the Oblivion Orb and not upgrade it. But the
Just
thing
sit
is,
on it.
like Oriana's AoE is not insane. Like something like Quay can apply it to the entire team and keep it ticking. Ori, it's a little harder, and also I would say that Ori like Ori needs death cap and stuff to be able to really continue to play the game. So I don't know, like after you have death cap and your pen, you can probably build mostly whatever you want and it's fine. But I'd be really, really careful about buying it early. And actually, I'd just be careful about buying it in general. I think it sucks. I think I've built healing cut like one in every like 40 games or something.
Yeah, I didn't even see a Oblivion of there. One thing I just noticed here, Shock, look at this here.
Oh, oh yeah, that's funny.
You're the
I'm
best. Do you know
goaded.
this person? Who's this? Veem? This is another
Hey,
Korean
he's
person.
on. Nah, I don't know him. I haven't. No, I don't recognize. The rank 7 there, that guy, he was like 1600 LP Korea with Orianna. I'm not sure what rank he is now, but I've played with him on my team and I played against him last year. He's very good as well. I think, yeah, he's goaded.
Well, you're styling on these people. You're 69% winner. People will be like, "Whoa, who's this Shock guy?" Like, I got to look at his Orianna build. What's going on there?
That's right. And I got the hashtag MLA thing there as well.
Yeah, hashtag MLA represent. Okay, the last thing for build is going to be skill order. Is it copy and paste every game? Q, W, E? What's the go here with skill order?
Yeah, so previously, people used to put points in W, and if you're against a range champ, you can go 2 or 3 points in W if you want. Basically, more points in W makes you stronger in lane against range champions, but you lose skirmishing power, and you're gonna take longer to like get stronger in general, right? Because having less points in Q means like lower or higher cooldowns. So the way I normally do it is I go 2 points W into range champs because what I like to do is have QWW. So that point in W at level 3 makes you very powerful. And after that, I just max Q. But honestly, if you just want to max Q every game, it's like not a problem at all. The only thing I would caution is that if you do want to max Q every game without putting a second point in W at level 3, be careful how often you cast W because W, until it has 2 points in it, is
Mm.
really mana costly for the amount of damage it does. So in those games, I would like only really use W kind of once I have a bigger mana pool or when my opponent's so low that I don't worry about the mana basically.
All right, great stuff. All right, Shock, let's now jump into the practice tool. Okay, Shock, so this section here, we're going to be going over Orianna's kits, abilities, combos, if there are them. We're going to sort of have a baseline assumption that everyone knows basically what Orianna's abilities do, but what do people need to know for Orianna's kit? How does it sort of work together?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure people are pretty aware that most of Oriana's abilities are, they function with the ball. The only things that you really need to know is like kind of the ball, it has this tether range after which it will snap back to you. That is going to be important for like quite a lot of your combos and stuff. So, like I said, we're kind of assuming that you know basics of Ori, but I'll talk about some of the stuff that you'll use very often. So the first one is that when you go to harass, you've got to remember that the ball has travel time. So throwing a Q from harassing someone in lane from all this distance gives it like you plenty of time to dodge basically. Whereas like if you're laning in the lane, for example, like this, if you can get the ball in the middle, it's much easier to hit people by tapping the ball from side to side as opposed to throwing
Doing the
it
full
all the way
cast
from
time,
you. Yeah,
I
exactly.
see.
Because like this is so much easier to dodge. Um,
Is this a
and
common
then
mistake you see in the Orianna students? Like they, a lot of the time they're just like trying to hit the max range cues. They don't really think
yeah,
about, is this a massive problem?
yeah, for sure. And you can kind of use that to control your opponent's movement as well. Like if you do get the ball in the middle, it does make it very difficult for the enemy to position, right? Because basically wherever they'll be, they will be kind of close to the ball. Now, what will often happen is they will swap sides. So, for example, if let's say you queue here and then they try and swap, they move over here, rather than queuing the really long distance from here to here, what you might want to do is snap it back to you first, and then either try and get closer to them for like a closer Q, or like get it back in the middle of the wave again. So just be very aware that most of the time you're not going to hit a Q if it's at max range. So try and manipulate it a little bit to just make it a little easier for yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really practical. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, your principle is that max range Qs, easy to dodge. You shouldn't be doing that. You should only do most of the time your max range Q to position your ball so you can get the following Qs easier to hit.
Yeah, pretty much. And one thing, like early in the lane, it can be a little difficult to spam out your Q because the cooldown's a bit higher. But, as you go later in the lane, like it's already down to 3.5 seconds here. So you can spam this out all the time with very low cost and just continually move it, into more threatening positions and not really worry too much about it.
I see. Okay. I guess what do we need to know for W? How do you think and use a bet W?
Yeah, so W is, like I said, the only really big thing to know for W is don't cast it too much until you have 2 points in it. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see is people just, wasting the mana and then it costing, they just run own basically. Now, with W, the way it works is it creates a field around your ball. So that means that you can cue the ground in order to slow enemies. Obviously you can still walk through the field without having to pick up your W and get the movement speed. Sometimes that can be useful, and also you can use it on an ally. So I don't know how you spawn an ally dummy. I think it's
that one. Yeah.
Is it this one? Maybe it's this one. Yes. Okay. One, yeah. So like if you E your ally like this, you can W them, for example, for them to engage, and you can be following them and still get the movement speed. So there's a lot of time in team fights where you will W for damage or for movement speed off of your ally. Like if your ally has an enemy next to them, you can W off your ally and it will still hit them. So that's going to be pretty useful. People think of the ball delivery just for your ult, but allowing it to deliver your W is pretty important too, because a lot of the time, especially in the mid game, your W will actually do very similar damage to your ult when it's got points in it.
I would think about the Oriannas that I've versed. Like, I'm scared of getting hit by that W. That is tons of damage. The slow's obnoxious as well. In terms of like the W does slow them, right? It slows people and speeds you up. Yeah. Okay. In terms of lane phase with W, do you think about holding your W movement speed a lot for like getting ganked and stuff? Like
not really.
Like a dash. I mean, like a typical dash.
Yeah, no, I would say no. Possibly, I mean, it depends a little bit what runes you have, because if you're playing the Comet build, most likely you're spamming W out all the time, right? Like you will be constantly looking for QWs. The slow is going to guarantee that the Comet hits. If you're playing Phase Rush, then you don't really need to hold W because you have a pretty easy way to proc Phase Rush. Like if you get ganked, let's say, for example, this is the enemy jungler coming to gank you, you have options. You can go for just a QWE and just proc everything. You can go for QE auto. You can go for QW auto. Now, one thing that is kind of important, we're probably going to get to this anyway, but it does matter for Phase Rush, is E only does damage if it goes through the enemy. So, for example, if I were to QWE, I don't get Phase Rush because Phase Rush, the ball didn't go through him. But if I were to QWE like this, I did it too soon, but you get Phase Rush from pulling the ball through. So you really got to make sure, and this is important just for trading too, for adding that little bit of extra damage, that you place the ball ever so slightly on the other side of them to get the pullback damage that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Okay, so what's your max damage combo, or is it, or you don't really have one? It's sort of all situational.
Yeah, honestly, you don't really have like a huge, it's not really a combo-based champ. You'll most likely just be spamming out Qs and Ws. But I do think the things to kind of keep in mind for getting that little bit of extra damage is mostly the ball positioning. So I'll kind of show you what I mean. So a lot of the time, when people are all-inning, they'll do one of two things. They'll either QW, and then they'll miss this little bit of E damage, and then that also means that you don't get Phase Rush to chase your opponent down.
Yeah,
that's
huge. That sounds huge. That's massive.
Yeah, right? I mean, it does make a big difference.
Rush. That's game-changing.
Yeah, especially because Orianna's autos do add up to like a lot of extra damage, right? Like if you can continue to get more of them. And another thing I see when people all-inning is ulting from the wrong side. So when you're trying to chase someone, it's really important that you ult them towards you rather than away from you. So if you just notice, if I place my ball here, it pulls them the direction of the ball. So if I ult here, they come to this side. But if I ult here, they go to this side. So you've got to be really careful, because I see that a lot when people are trying to dive and they actually move the enemy away from them. And you do have to be a little careful because you can actually miss your W damage depending on like where the ball is placed. Like if you are and then W. Depending on how far you pull them, you could miss the W damage. So what I like to do is, let's say I'm all-inning this guy. Normally, I will QW for the slow first, right? Then I will let them get max distance from my ball. So I'll wait for them to be like basically on the very edge of it, and then I'll pull them back in because that way we get the distance, and that allows us to pull the E through them as well.
And it sounds like you're also min-maxing like your cooldowns as well, your damage. You can have another Q to go up, and then you can like I see this a lot with like Diana. Like when you play Diana, you want to you combo. You don't want to insta R them, get them on the edge. So you're sort of like drag them, suck them in a little bit more, and then your cooldowns are coming up. You can obviously that extra maybe half a second could make a difference with your cooldowns.
Yeah. One other thing I want to quickly add to that is that a lot of the time, I see this in laning phase and like in team fights and stuff. Especially as you get into higher elos, people know to flash Orianna ult because it's like a big CC ability and it'll lead to a lot of follow up. So what can often happen is like if you're holding a choke or if you look for all in, if you QR first, what happens is they flash the ult and then you don't get the W damage at all. But if you QW them and then you ult, at the very least you got your W damage, and either they won't flash the ult and you'll get that, or they will flash the ult, but at least you did your QW.
I say so. People rush the QR. It's like, oh my god, this is such a good QR. But your mindset is sort of see how they play it out. Go QW. Force them to like bait out their flash, and then you can look for a more high percentage R.
Yeah, and it's especially important when you're like trying to hold a choke because like most people they will walk through once you use ult. So sometimes you actually just want to keep spamming Qs and Ws and like holding it and only using R when they like have to commit essentially. Because the moment you use R, they will walk through, and at that point your choke is gone. And that can be worth it depending on how much damage you do or whatever. But like for example, if this dragon is still high HP and you need to buy more time, then you actually want to hold it longer. Like the pressure of holding Oriole can sometimes be better than actually using it, especially AD carries are super scared of walking forward when Ori has ult for good reason, right? So don't undervalue the threat of just holding it. Obviously, don't hold it forever, but it does create a lot of zoning just with having it up.
It sounds like that's a really important question for people to be asking when they're reviewing or looking over their gameplays. Should I have held my R to create more threat and pressure in certain situations?
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing to get better at, to be honest, but it is one of the big differences I think between like a good Orianna and a great Orianna.
Okay, any other tips that Orianna players need to know, like really practical things that you do, or breaking down common mistakes that you see with, your coaching Orianna players?
Yeah, so there's a few other little things I can think of. One is that the bowl gives vision. So the bowl gives vision of bushes, right? So like you can face check bushes with it. It's also quite good for checking areas, like if you want to check if someone's here or whatever. And it can be kind of useful for holding an area too. So like at level 1, for example, something I like to do is I come and queue this bush, and then I come and like stand back here, or I can stand over here or whatever. Another thing you can do is you can take control of the lane at level 1. So at level 1, before minions spawn at maybe like 110 or whatever, you can come and like place the ball here immediately. And if your opponent isn't here, then you're already very far ahead because you have the ball already set up and you can just start autoing the wave and like zoning with your Q. Another little thing is that remember that your E grants resists, so 6 armor and 6 magic resist currently, to whoever has the ball. So that can be you or it can be an ally. So like if you're fighting someone and the ball is not on you, like if you just come here and look at my stats, you'll see that my stats do drop when the ball is out. Now you can get these stats back by Eing yourself or just by picking it up. So in early levels, it's not a huge deal, but later on in the game, especially if you're shielding, someone who's quite squishy like an AD carry, giving like a bunch of extra magic resist to a Jinx or something is the difference between them getting one shot by that assassin or whatever. So definitely don't undervalue that. There's one more thing I have forgotten. Oh yeah, actually I do remember. So there is a couple combos you can do with flash. So you can R flash, which doesn't have that much value most of the time. I'll just show you. So you literally just R and then flash. The main time you're going to use this is if your Q is on cooldown while you're trying to all-in someone. So for example, let's say that you've used QWE or something. So you're like, those are all on cooldown, and you throw, or yeah, maybe your Q is down and your opponent is like over here. So the problem is you don't have a Q up to move it here, but they're not in an area where you can ult them. That's when you might want to R flash. But honestly, I use this like, I don't know, again, like once every 3 weeks or something. So it's not
Yeah, okay, it's not
super
that
important to
practical.
know. I
Yeah.
guess you can like arc flash over walls potentially to catch people out, but
Yeah.
it's really not that
It looks
useful.
pretty psychopathic. That's pretty psychopathic.
Yeah, yeah, it really has to like end the fight, or you're just gonna die straight after.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
everything that I can think of.
All right. Well, let's now look at all this in action. Looking at one of your games in Korean Challenger now, Shock.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so Shock, I'm gonna ask you some general Orianna questions, and then we can go back and talk about the level one and the way you think about this game. The first thing is Orianna a hard champion? Would you recommend this to someone learning mid lane? You see a lot of the time Orianna's Orianna's like a really sexy champion because you see it with world championships. The Korean players, all the best players. Orianna always comes into the meta around worlds, right? It's like the
Yeah.
classic, mid lane. It's an awesome team champion. How do you think about this champion in solo queue and for the average player, maybe a gold platinum player, picking up Orianna?
Yeah, so I think Orianna, the reason you see a lot of like, high level players pick Orianna is because Orianna is a champion that scales more with fundamentals, I would say, as opposed to, wow, I forgot about that. Orianna is a champion that scales more with fundamentals as opposed to champion skill. It's not to say that investing time into Orianna isn't valuable, but it's not to the same level of something like, I don't know, like you could invest a million games into Aurelia and you would always be getting better at Aurelia. You know what I mean? So is Orianna good for solo queue? I think Orianna is really good for solo queue. Like she's very, very strong in lane, and she's also a really good side laner. And I see a common complaint that Orianna does no damage, which I mean,
It's
I
because they
think
built
it's
a
just
ZHONYA'S
bad
third.
builds.
They built
Yeah, it's literally just
ZHONYA'S
bad
third. We
builds.
know.
I think
Yeah.
Orianna does crazy damage. So yeah, I think it's a great champion. But like I said, it's gonna really test your fundamentals as a mid laner, as opposed to being like a super difficult champion. It's more like a hard play style, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I coach, most people, like so many people below Emerald, junglers, and I rarely see Orianas. And like you said, like the benefits, like I see so many strengths of the champion, like, the strong, lane phase, you say side laning, the build looks like, you can put out a lot of damage as well as be tanky with the whole Seraphs and stuff. I'm sort of surprised why more people don't pick this, especially with like how sexy of a champion is, how much story and history a champ like Orianna has in terms of the competitive landscape of League.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so let's talk about sort of high level with Orianna. What does a great Orianna game look like? Like, how do you win games with Orianna? What does it look like? I guess sort of my question is like, what's your champ identity?
Yeah, so I think Orianna she is like pretty well rounded, like that is kind of a hallmark of the champion. But Orianna is extremely good when there are other champions to buff. So that can be bruisers, right? Like if you ever have something like, yeah, any kind of like top lane bruiser or jungler like a Zinzao, Viego, like champs that benefit from your shields and MS. Ball delivery is an option, right? Like things like Nocturne can be quite good, but it's not required by any means. It's also really, really good with hyper carries. Like if you see a Jinx on your team or an Aphelios, or I mean, even champs like, I don't know, anything that builds crit really, like a Xayah and stuff is good. You can play Ori with basically anything, but the more champions you have the buff, the better. You actually don't need to worry too much about the enemy team comp. It is more with your team comp, but she is so well
Mm.
rounded that I mean, you could blind pick Ori without seeing anything, and it would be fine. But yeah, like if you have, say, I don't know, like Zinzao jungle and a tank top laner, and then you had, I don't know, in your bot lane you had like Jinx and Rel. Oh my god, like the game's over.
All right. Okay, so we talked a bit about the importance of the way you think about winning games with Orianna has a lot got to do with your own team comp.
Yeah.
What are we thinking here? What are you thinking here, level one, in terms of your team comps of your draft?
Yeah, so I'd actually say I don't have the best comp here. I kind of wish that Varus would have gone on hit, but I think he had to go poke for his lane. So it would be much nicer to play with like a DPS carry. But I have a Rakan. Rakan's quite good with Ori. There is really good ball delivery there. And I do have a Sedge, and tanks are really good with Ori too, because think of Ori as just like, her shield's giving you more health. So that synergizes really well with the resistances. So like if you have a very tanky champ, Orianna will make them even tankier. So it's not I wouldn't say this is like an S tier Ori game, and definitely their comp is pretty good against me, but overall, it's not bad. I'm like reasonably happy with this.
Do you like seeing a Rakan on your team? It's like, yeah, let's go put the ball in Rakan, and we can the Rakan as Rakan engages.
Yeah, it's not bad. I think, yeah, I'm pretty happy with Rakan. I think Rel is my favorite. Alistair, Leona, Yeah, any of those. Basically, just what I don't want to see is like, uh, any mage support, maybe with exception of Karma. But yeah, most range supports are pretty bad with Ori. I don't know. Maybe if you're both buffing someone, like if you played, say, Jinx, Lulu, Ori, I think that could be good. But generally, I do want a melee support if possible.
Okay, so talking about your setup, it looks like this game here we can't really see your runes here, but it looks like you must be going resolve. You're going bone plate in, and what's the other
The
one you
runes
were
are on
going?
the they're on the right hand side. It's because I have the
Am I
map
blind?
swapped.
Oh my god, I'm literally
Yeah,
blind. Okay,
sorry.
yeah. So, yeah, Vampire and Unflinching. Yeah, so this is the classic matchup against a lot of these melee mid lanes. The
Yeah.
runes.
Yeah, if you're against like any melee that's any kind of like melee assassin, pretty much there's maybe a couple you wouldn't go resolve against, but yeah, pretty much always you're going to go to this against melees, and it's pretty important for surviving. Like a lot of these champs, if they get on you, they will just outtrade you, and bone plating is one of the ways you protect yourself from that.
A question I always ask to people that come on the show is, what do you do level 1? A lot of people, sit in base really late. They, changing their Spotify playlist to AFK, going to the bathroom or whatever. What do you do level 1, or is it just depend on what you're
Yeah, so
feeling
I would
like?
say mostly your job is to defend the Raptors. It does depend a little bit on the matchup because if you're the winning side of the matchup, normally you want to defend the Raptors because the enemy will try and ward Raptors since they won't be able to ward otherwise. Whereas if you're the losing side of the matchup, potentially you will try to get a level 1 ward either on their blue or their Raptors. But it doesn't matter too much. Like I think yeah, if you stand as long as you guard somewhere rather than just like standing in mid, I think you'll be okay. There's like pros and cons to standing in different spots, but as long as you're defending something, I think it's fine.
Yeah. So this is what you said, where you like to just chuck your Q in this bush for control. So you're sort
Yeah,
of like, it's pretty good. You're checking this bush. You're sort of defending two sort of areas, I guess, at the same time. This
yeah,
seems like pretty high impact. So your mindset is to defend Raptors on this side of the map. If you felt like that, you didn't want to get a ward on their Raptors or their blue buff. On the other side of the map, you would just you'll be controlling that bush, queuing over that wall, and standing here. Is that right?
yeah. I think it's yeah. That's pretty much what I do. I think especially in high-elo, defending Raptors is very very valuable for your team. And like this was pretty unfortunate. I'm pretty sure Silas like E'd over the
Yeah,
dragon
the
pit.
dragon wall.
Yeah, so that
That's
hasn't
really
happened to me
smart.
before, but
Yeah.
yeah, I suppose it can happen.
So burning your flash, this is crazy, Vod. You've just burnt your flash against the Silas. Level
Yeah, so this
1,
is
challenger career. This is crazy.
so, yeah,
It's not
especially
ideal.
Pike Pantheon Silas. So this is
Yeah.
like no flash against Pike Pantheon Silas is basically the worst possible scenario you could start in. So if you're against a melee that's strong early, like a lot of melees don't spike until 3, but certain champs like Silas, Akali, Aurelia, they spike even earlier. So against these champs, you just want to try and hold the wave outside your turret. And especially if you lose flash, like you really need a wave on your side because if you try and push, you will just die.
Yeah.
Now, against melees, like Fizz, for example, they don't spike until 3, you can push the first couple waves, and then you'll want to do this, like either on the middle or on your side. You just don't want to give them the distance to run you down. And you also don't want to put yourself in a gankable position because, like, Ori is, well, yeah, she is a mobile, and she doesn't have great gank setup of her own. It is different for range versus range, though, which we'll cover later.
So your mind's idea is just let the wave come into you and you'll just last hit in, basically.
Yeah. If I can hold it like this, though, like this is valuable. Like holding that off the turret goes a pretty long way because it means that the wave won't crash and then rebounds in the middle to where Cyrus could trade on me. So I kind of smurfed on him, I think, with the wave control. Like this made me safe for a whole nother wave, which is pretty important because, Pantheon could have 3 camped mid or something. So I really wanted to just keep the wave here as long as I can and kind of realize that if I don't feed, like we'll probably massively outscale, but I've got to be really, really careful with no flash against their sort of champs.
So I'm going to be curious to see how you proc phase rush here. So like, what do you auto, you QW auto? That doesn't
QW
give you
auto or
phase.
QWE, it kind of depends like
Yeah.
how the trade goes. And one thing you actually do want to be careful of is sometimes you can proc phase rush by trading, but you actually don't want to. You might want to space out your abilities just to make sure you don't accidentally proc it.
I
Like
see.
here, for
Because you need to
example,
hold it. You have to really hold it. Your
yeah,
phase rush
well,
for
yeah, if you're
defenses.
especially if your wave is pushing out like this, like here
Yeah.
where I had no vision and my wave is in a fucked spot.
Yeah.
Until I saw Pantheon bot on the map there, I was terrified to use phase rush. Now though, the moment I see Pantheon bot, you can see that my mindset instantly changes, right? I proc phase rush straight away, and I'm like starting to use my abilities aggressively, and I'm really starting to heavy trade. But I was extremely aware of the fact that Pantheon hadn't shown. And I think just as a mid laner in general, like not even Ori specific, if you have a death to the jungler in the early game, like it's extremely punishing. You know, it's you can't afford to die to the jungler. It's too problematic. It just does too much.
I could see definitely a common mistake is that Oriannas are accidentally or like over forcing their phase rush and then they're just like dying. And that maybe that's what we actually didn't go to the runes, like what people pick, but maybe that's what scares people off as well with this champ. It's like, oh, phase rush is just too complicated. It's too hard to play with phase mid lanes. Like maybe that could be another reason. But yeah, like when I actually think about me, you know, I'm a jungler, like versed in Orianna. A good Orianna is actually extremely difficult to gank with phase rush. People might be saying, you know, your Jarvan, like, you know, Jarvan, because I play a lot of Jarvan, you know, isn't that really easy to kill Orianna? It's like, well, no, I'm never going to actually hit, if this guy has flash or phase rush, I'm never going to hit an EQ. I'd have to get EQ, getting range to do an R, then I'm just trading flashes or whatever, you know? So it's surprisingly difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was a kind of a turbo banger. This is actually like the one of the best fights you could have as Ori. Like long fights, especially with you having more points in Q, are very, very good for Ori. They also happen to be very, very good for Silas, which is a bit annoying, but you can see there that like I get so many Qs off, and I get so many empowered autos off, and like my E increases ZHONYA'S longevity by a lot. So a long fight like this, you're pretty happy with, and especially compared to other mid lane mages, like most mid lane mages are more, especially early game, are more kind of like one and done. But yeah, like with empowered autos, really low CDs, and phase rush for dodging abilities as well. It's quite nice.
I assume that maybe some Oriannas don't auto attack enough. Is auto attacking really being important in between your abilities?
Yeah, it adds up for sure, especially early game. I'd say, you know, in team fights and stuff, it's probably not worth greeting for autos most of the time, but definitely early game, you know, like a couple extra autos do add up to quite a bit of extra damage. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's like the main focus by any means, but it adds up, right? And one of the good things about phase rush is that you can get a couple extra autos off.
We didn't talk about TP, but I assume you take TP every single game, right? Playing mages and mid lanes impossible without TP.
Yeah, pretty much.
No one's cooking with like Flash Ignite or whatever, you know.
Nah, not an Ori.
Okay, this is one thing you got a pretty good base there. Lost Chapter and the TR. This is like a really good base. And again, that's because the 2 kills you got.
Yeah, it's pretty much unheard of, honestly, like getting that much gold in your first base. I would say, you know, don't greed the chapter too much. Like it is totally fine to have components, you know, things like tier 1 boots, Dark Seal, refill. Like there's tons of really good early game items, and I do think sometimes people go chapter and, you know, kind of just like skip everything else, which can be a mistake. But I mean, if you can get a chapter, it is a really solid item.
Okay, so a lot of mid laners struggle with what to do after they push their waves in. So what are some things you're thinking about? Like, you know, you push the wave and you're leaning towards bot side. Why are we leaning towards bot side?
Yeah, so my first thing that I try and do is I try and set up vision. Normally, I will try and set up vision on one side, and typically, if I can, I'll try to do it on the side where I think my jungler is going to be. So in this case, Sedge has to clear 2 camps, and she will come bot. Yeah, if you can get all your vision on the same side of your jungler, that is good. But honestly, just placing vision is the first step. You know, like I would prefer that players just place their wards rather than worrying too much about like where the perfect ward position is. And just make sure you hug to them, because if you have that sort of setup there where like you have a pink plus a ward, as long as you hug bot side, you should be pretty much invulnerable. You know, maybe there's like cheese ganks, like lane ganks or whatever, but you'll be a hell of a lot safer if you just place all the vision on one side.
Yeah, Silas is not going to hit you with an E with you have phase rush up and your E.
Yeah.
Sorry, your W.
Yeah, and if you can manage to dodge E, you'll almost definitely win the trade.
So your mindset in this matchup is dodge the E, and then the moment he doesn't have E, just go ahead, just run at him and just smack him with auto attacks and Qs.
Yeah, and if you are taking bone plating, like that is definitely your bone plating and phase rush are like major factors. Like if he hits you and you have bone punting up, it's not the end of the world. If you get hit by E when your bone punting is down, you are in big trouble, especially if you don't have phase rush.
So here, on this trade, did you intentionally not proc phase rush? I mean, you're not scared of this guy because he missed his E?
I kind of just.
Or we just can't.
So the only way I could proc phase rush here was by turning around and autoing, and I didn't want to get ulted, so I just decided to run away instead. But if I could have proc phase rush without getting ulted, I would have tried, but I missed my Q at the start. Yeah, so here I'm just being pretty careful because he's got like a lot of distance to run me down, and my bone plating wasn't up. But now, after this wave, I think I should start to get a bit more aggro. Maybe it was a mistake here to not go refill. You know, like refillable is really OP, and lacking that extra 200 HP does make me quite a lot more killable. If you can as well, try not to let your bone plating get proc. Like I got hit by a Q there. That's a pretty big error. Like obviously they're consciously playing around that too, right? Like he is trying to get rid of my bone plating, but if you can keep it up, it is pretty valuable. At this stage of the game as well, I don't normally freeze. So like you can hold the wave in the early levels, but at this stage of the game, if you freeze, you'll give too many like free bases, free roams, free grubs and stuff. So there kind of comes a point where you have to push. But normally by that point, you're gonna have better vision and like more control and stuff like that.
Right, so we get Boots, Dark Seal. And then this is obviously a Seraph's game.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back mid, looks like we're going to catch this mid wave. So ZHONYA'S fighting. They're fighting grubs. So game's looking a little bit, you're going to lose grubs there. I think there's some shutdowns there. Someone's 3-0 on the enemy team. Are you ever panicking, like your team being behind early game? Or are you always just comfortable you can scale and just play fights well?
Yeah, I think as long as I have phase rush, I don't feel super panicked. But if you're losing with Comet, I definitely think you're in a bit of trouble because you're going to have a much harder time. Like you really do need to win early game with Comet, which you should.
Okay.
But yeah, I think with phase rush, like you're pretty confident that you will just kill people in the side lane, and team fighting will be pretty easy. It's not to say that you'll win every game, obviously, but I don't think you should be like scared about playing late game. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's why you recommend a lot for people to just go phase rush when you're learning Orianna.
Yeah, I think it is way easier to play.
So this stage of the game, like a lot of champions, it's like about shove and move and like shove and move.
Yeah.
Are you ever looking to sort of like just last hit and keep the wave in neutral, or is it always like I'm just trying to clear the wave and move? Because Orianna's not that. I feel like Orianna's not really a champion that really likes moving or like sitting in, fighting river fights. Like what are you sort of trying to do here, or am I wrong in saying that?
I think like most of it is just me wanting to prevent Silas from moving. Like I don't want to give Silas access to the river, but I'm not really looking for anything. You can base a little bit off like what your jungler's doing. Like if your jungler is looking to invade, then you should probably try and push. Whereas like if your jungler's in base, you should probably not push at all because you'll die to a gank. But yeah, I don't really mind where the wave is at this point. So I just want to make sure that Silas isn't allowed to do free stuff. As long as that doesn't happen, it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah, so you're just chill, just scaling. Just scale. This is sort of like a downtime of the game until you get first item. Or the first tower breaks and you get to a side lane. You're just happy, just prevent Silas from doing things, and then you can just farm in.
Yeah, pretty much. So here, when I have no phase rush and no bone plating, I know it's pretty likely that Silas will look to trade. So I can kind of bait him into the sedge.
Beautiful. So predictable. They're so predictable.
Yeah, Silas players. Yeah, so after that, I was feeling really confident. Like Silas falling behind early is, well, really, really bad, I think. Like he's going to be really useless if he doesn't snowball. So I was feeling like, not that the game was immediately over, But I thought we were like pretty hard winning at this point.
So you're not worried about this 3-0 Jin?
Well, this is a shock opinion, but I think Jin's fucking useless. So no, no,
I
I
would
don't know.
somewhat agree with you. I would somewhat agree
I
with
think
you.
Jin
I've
is
had some
good.
experiences.
I think Jin is good, but I think the moment there's a tank, especially with Ori to buff, like how
Yes.
is Jin killing Sedge with
Yeah.
Ori? It's like not
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah. When I see Jin against heavy tank teams, I'm also very concerned how we're going to kill anyone.
Yeah. No, I'm a big Jin hater. Yeah, so bone plating, you can see there. I don't know how much damage. You can check the runes, but it prevents a pretty crazy amount of damage in the trade.
Let's have a look.
I think it's
249
like,
right now. So that did what? 140.
yeah, and then there's also you get the unflinching value while you're CC by the E as well. So like that gives you extra like 10 MR or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's insanely high value. Yeah, you're just going to be unkillable. Plus, like the resistance of your ball and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
you're
probably have
really
like
hard to
70
kill.
magic resist.
Will you sit on yellow trinket for most of the game? Do you switch out to blue trinket?
I normally
That's
swap to blue trinket once side laning is over, but I like to keep my yellow trinket for side laning. But there kind of comes a point where it just sort of becomes an ARAM and you need to like check barons and stuff. So at that point, I go blue. I'd actually say I probably sit on yellow a little too long. I often forget to swap, but yeah, I pretty much never go sweeper. And it doesn't matter too much. I like to stay on yellow for a pretty long time, though, at least until like, roughly 25 minutes or so.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah. Sweepers. I mean, your jungle and your support. That's their job to deny vision. Your job is to protect yourself at all times and ward and all that. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in terms of your spikes and spiking, so your Seraphs, your Archangels hasn't upgraded to a Seraphs yet, right? So are you like you said that you like in the game state, but you're actually strong right now? Like when do you actually spike as Orianna?
I would say Ori has like a couple things to think about. One is the spikes of your teammates, right? Because you're buffing other people. Like times when, for example, your Jinx hits IE or your jungler hits Sundered Sky or whatever. Those are big spikes for you as well. I would say Ori's actually strong. Like basically every stage of the game. Like you definitely don't need to complete Seraphs to be strong, and Ori is a strong laner anyway. So I don't even think there's really one particular point where you're like, now I can fight, whereas before I couldn't. You're pretty much down to fight whenever. Maybe just be a little careful, like what your teammates have, because I suppose, like, if your opponent has something that spikes very hard early, like if you're playing against a champ like Diana and she had Rocket Bell and you had Seraph, like then you're probably kind of weak. But here, when Silas is on useless items, it doesn't really matter if my items are not particularly good as well.
Okay, let's look at this fight again because this looks like a great fight for your extended trade, right? Or like an
Yeah.
extended fight, right? So let's break this one down, and I want to look at your ult usage and all that, and phase rush proc. So good movement.
Yeah, so trying to use the Phase Rush MS to kind of like keep Pantheon at max range is pretty good. I do see a lot of Oriannas like play melee range too early. And I mean, I did get hooked, which was a pretty big mistake, but I was like really trying to keep my distance from Pantheon to make sure that he couldn't just like W on me for free. Like if Pantheon has to use Flash to jump on me, I'm very happy with that. Like I can match Flash after, or he might be like committed far past his team. Just at least make it like a little difficult because I mean, I don't know. Even if you make a mistake, if it's like a mistake plus he had to use Flash as opposed to just a mistake and he didn't use Flash, like potentially that means Pantheon dies later, right? Or you live later or something. So I think there are like levels to positioning. Even if you make a mistake, sometimes it can be like a less bad mistake if you make it a little more difficult for them.
Jin's trying to cancel your base. So no towers have broken just yet. So are you still on just like running mid lane duty, or will you actually start to side lane? I mean, we're 50 minutes in the game. This is typically where towers have been broken, and we're in the mid game. Or is this you're just adapting to your Varus has just gone mid now? So I assume you
Yeah,
go
so
bot.
honestly, here, the main thing I wanted is I didn't want to play against Jin because Jin outranges Ori very heavily. So I just wanted to match Silas. Like if Silas were mid, I would try and go mid. Um, Obviously, like if Varus is mid, I kind of have no choice but to farm bot. But I really did not want to play against the Varus here. Or sorry, the Jhin.
Love this. Your team's doing Herald, so this is your weak side. You're
Yeah.
respecting. Auto attack, auto attack. Yeah, you're definitely weaving a lot of auto attacks I'm seeing here still at this stage of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, you do want to get like a lot of Qs, and especially when phase rushes up, like you can normally get autos for free. Yeah, I guess maybe I do auto more than I give myself credit for. They do
Like
add
there's a
up.
lot of auto attacks. You look like you're like an 80 carry just with 0 attack speed. I mean, you take the attack speed rune, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
I guess is that more for last hitting though? Your mindset,
It's
right?
for
Is
last
it?
hitting and for pushing. Like if you have
Okay.
attack speed and the enemy mid laner doesn't, if you guys both just spam autos, like you get the push, which is, like the prior just matters so much. I do hear the complaint a lot of like, how do I sideline it as a mobile mage? And I think a lot of it is just kind of like being aware of the windows, like playing safe, for example, while my team was on Herald, and then now I can play aggro because I know my team's bot side and Silas is dead and stuff like that. So I think it's mostly about windows and itemizing, right? Like there are certain matchups where if you don't have Seraphs in two, you just won't be able to push. And sometimes even if an item is worse for the team fight, it can still be better overall because it allows you to side lane, and then side laning gives you more gold and more pressure, and that makes up for the item being like slightly worse.
I want to talk about, we're talking a bit about mid game and like, mages and all that. I see a lot of people always not think about the next wave. Everyone would base right now, or most people, like, especially what I'll say maybe below platinum. But you have a next wave here, right? That's what you're
Yeah.
thinking about. I'm going to stay for the next wave. I feel very safe. I'm pretty sure 90% of people, maybe, you could talk of your experience as well, would just recall now. I'm low on resources. There's no wave. I should just recall. But pushing this wave actually helps you in a way play the big game easier, because now you actually have a lot of room to actually get on the map. You don't have to attend back bot quickly.
Yeah, you get a ton more time. Like if you can push the wave further, it is really valuable. And I think here, like with Silas Pantheon dead, or Pike showing mid as well, I basically had nothing to be scared of. So I was a tiny bit scared of maybe a Silas TP, which is what I actually checked here. If that guy was, TPing in a bush, if he had TP, I think I was just dead. But honestly, I was down to take the risk, and because getting the wave in is really valuable if you can.
So yeah, not switching it to blue trinket just yet here, Shok. Still sitting on your yellow.
Yeah, should be a lot of side laning still, and I want to be able to create vision for myself.
And yeah, because we pushed out bot, we can go catch this wave. And now I assume you go back bot to catch bot wave now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Varus is going mid.
So
TP
I just want to quickly show here. This is where people might spam W to run around the map. If the tempo doesn't matter, then you should hold the mana. Obviously, if you need to be there quicker, you can use it. But these little 75 manas, these add up, And I see people being like down 300 or 400 mana for spamming W when the time didn't actually matter.
They didn't need to be there ASAP. Yeah, you're just catching this wave. It doesn't matter. Silas is always going to have a chest turn here on you, right? So it doesn't matter if you're there quicker.
Yeah, same with clearing the wave too. Like you see how I don't use any Ws on those creeps at all? Like it's very, very costly.
Yeah, that's game changing. So yeah, people just W spam addicts, and they're wondering why they have no mana.
Yeah.
It's probably a fun ability. It's like a good little dopamine ability though, right? Like that's why people probably like it, right?
Yeah, well, moving fast feels good.
Yeah, yeah. This moving around feels so, like, this looks so boring. You're just waddling around with no Ws. So I guess you're not afraid of this guy at all, because you got Phase Rush, you've got Bone Plate in, you got Seraphs. There's no way this guy, if anything, you're just going to kill this guy, right?
Yeah, I think I was a tiny bit scared maybe of Pantheon ult, but I know in the 1v1 that it's pretty favorable. But yeah, I didn't know where Pantheon was, so I was a bit scared to chase with my Sedge showing mid. Because, if Sedge is showing mid, Pantheon like really wants to gank somewhere else. But yeah, that kind of worked out. Like they actually went on mid, and I don't know what happened here because they somehow ended up engaging on Sedge, which in my mind just seems useless. So I think that was kind of troll. And it's super nice for me because now I know that there's like a lot of side lane pressure alleviated.
Also, Silas, I think, is built Rod of Ages, so like he's doing negative damage. Like he's not scary at all.
Yeah, he's very weak.
So yeah, I guess in terms of your thought process when it comes to like closing out games, like how do you people's like, okay, I'm pretty good at lane phase, especially in the melee matchups as Orianna Shok. How do I close out the game? How do you think about that?
So normally I would just say that as long as you continue to get golden XP from the side lane, then eventually you should just win a fight. Basically, like I find the game is normally won off Dragon Soul or Baron or Atacon, and Ori is extremely good at all of these fights. So you just kind of in a lot of ways, the rest of the game is just to make team fighting easier, right? Like the better you lane, the better you side lane, the more gold you have for the team fight, and the less they do. And yeah, eventually, I mean, especially as Ori, you will just crush a team fight and win the game. And I do think that if you are good at all those things and you're still struggling to win, it probably is that your team fighting is not particularly good, because it's not enough just to win the team fight. You have to win the team fight harder, right? Like
Hard,
if the
I
team fight's
see.
very
Yeah.
close, you don't really
Mm.
get much of a reward. But if you smash them, like you get Atacon immediately, or you get Baron immediately, and that's what's actually going to win you the game.
And when you say smash them, are you talking about like a wombo, like 3-man ult, or are you happy to just get one ult really quick on just one person, just one
Yeah, I'm
kill?
happy to get one. I guess I meant smash them more as in the terms of like if you have a close fight where everyone's left on extremely low health, that's like really bad. But if you can like this will be a good example, right? Like see how these guys can't even touch me, and even like no matter what happens, I'm gonna exit this fight on like more or less full HP, which means I have
Mm.
tons of health to do whatever I want, like take jungle camps, do objectives, stay on the map, whatever I want. Whereas like if I had lived there on 1 HP, maybe I couldn't take the turret, or maybe I wouldn't be able to push the next wave, or maybe we couldn't do dragon or whatever. So it matters a lot how hard you win the team fight, not just like the 1 or 0 of did you win or did you lose.
I see. So you're really thinking about conserving your HP as a resource so you can continue the extended trade. And this is where you talk about holding making sure you're not running around W in too much, because you want to have mana for these long trades as well, for these long fights.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think this fight here is such a good example of like what Ori is good at. Like if you position and tether well, it's so hard for people to touch you. Like you have tons of slows and low cooldowns, and your phase rush makes such a big difference for things like this. Like Pantheon, I'm not. Yeah, I mean he just got here so quickly, but you'll see like the WMS, and
Yeah.
then just like kite him away, and he doesn't even get close to hitting me
Yeah,
really.
it's not even close. That's crazy. And you can just hold flash. Again, I really like how patient you are with R. This does seem to be a really. I'm excited to see the R usage of the Emerald player that we look over to see if they're like rushing their R's too much. You're just happy to poke again. Like your mind's like, I'm just gonna stay full HP. Just poke, Q back, go out, proc phase rush, go in and out, and then you sort of look for an eye opportunity.
Yeah.
I guess that's quite different. Again, Orianna's such a weird mage in that sense, because the traditional mage is more so, you have your combo, your burst, like a Syndra I'm thinking of, or actually, I don't know. I guess Victor's sort of like in and
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
same HP. All right, well, they basically FF here. They basically just given up. Shocked
Yeah.
Orianna, 2 OP. This is unplayable. I mean, as you said, like, there's no way Jin's their win condition and Jin can't carry versus your comp, so it looks like they just give
Yeah.
up. Okay, Shock. So we looked at a melee matchup lane phases here. Now let's look at a ranged matchup. I think we're going to look at an Azir game. See how you play at
Yeah.
the lane phase specifically.
Not the real faker, I'm afraid, on the Heimer. I did check.
Impersonators.
Yeah. There is some pretty high ranks in this game, though. Like, the Puppy is ranked 2 or 3 as jungle, and the Nautilus is an LPL support, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember which one, but I think he is. I can't remember if there's anyone else.
All right, I'll actually mention that. Okay, ready? I will introduce this section.
All right.
Okay, so versus Azir here. You've just told me, Shock, this is not the real faker. This is a faker impersonator, hide on bush. But we've got a bunch of, you said pro players in this lobby as well.
Yeah, a lot of LP.
Okay, yeah, this is going to be very interesting here. We're seeing the range matchup because, obviously we learned a lot around the way you think about phase rush and bone plating. We got Arcane Comet here now. So these are the runes that we're taking against an Azir. So you want to
Yep.
sort of walk through why these runes here?
Yeah, so if you're going to play Comet, you should fully commit to early aim. So you're definitely going to want Scorch and you're definitely going to want Cut Down. You could go Presence of Mind, I guess, instead of Cut Down. But like I said, I find it doesn't really do much in the laning phase. It's mainly for team fights. So I like to go this just for the maximum amount of damage in the laning phase. It is really important that if you take this page, that you are winning mid pretty significantly. You don't necessarily need solo kills, but you basically need like perma prior. You need to be forcing your opponent into bad bases, bad items, big health lead, because you are going to have a lot harder time team fighting and side laning with this build unless you get fed enough to kind of offset it.
Okay, so you do your classic level 1 strategy here, Shok. You sprint out of base and you defend the raptors and you throw a Q over the wall to control this bush.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, one thing I actually forgot to mention, a very little detail you didn't mention either, Shok, is that you queued over the wall to check the raptors to make sure the enemy jungler didn't start them for give information to your jungler. That's like MVP level stuff, Shok.
Oh, in the previous game? Yeah.
Yeah, in the previous game. I was going to mention that, but we were sort of moving forward. But that's insane. Like, because knowing if the enemy jungler starts your raptors, it's game changing. It's really
it's mega value.
Information. So you queued over the wall. All right, so we already got our first Arcane Comet proc, right? So this seems pretty good.
Yep. Yeah, sometimes it can be good just to queue the creeps early. Like if the prior is contested, then you might just want to use a couple queues to push the wave. Like I used one queue there on the backline of creeps just because I wanted to make sure that basically I want the wave to be slow pushing. I want the wave to push as slowly as possible, but I do want it to be pushing because that's going to give me the longest time to harass him and like abuse my level advantages and stuff like that. And if you throw a Q through the wave, it does do less damage to your opponent, but it is worth it because you'll get pushed at the same time. So normally,
is it also the ball placement principle as well?
Yeah, that's nice as well. Yeah, because even if you miss, like even here, it's like in a good spot, even if I miss.
Yeah. Oh, so you actually are trying to hit Azir.
I am trying to hit him here, but yeah, it's like if I miss, it's it's still very threatening. Yeah.
So should we be paying attention to this lane phase? What do you want us to be paying attention to? Should we be paying attention to the ball placement, or is it more so like?
I would mainly pay attention to harass timing. So the thing is, like especially if you're playing this build, you cannot afford to miss a QW because it costs too much mana. And if you do miss just even a couple QWs, like it's gonna lower your pressure over the lane a lot. Because especially if they play sustain, like this guy has second wind, like the lower health he gets, the more regen he gets. So you've got to be kind of careful. Like I said, you don't need a solo kill, but you do not you can't run because the moment you run and you lose all your pressure, then they just free farm. And if you're playing this build, most mids probably will outscale you. Like an Azir, well, at least the meta ones like Azir, Victor, Syndra, or whatever, you will get outscaled from Comet. But the upside is like look at the laning phase, right? Like you are an absolute demon in the laning phase with this build.
So what's advice for hitting more QWs? Like is it the classic like wait for them to last hit a minion or go for a last hit? Is that the baseline?
Yeah, I would say it's mostly the timing, like just waiting for them to come up for a creep. With this build, you actually don't have to hit the Q. You only really need to hit the W. And the W is the little like, it's got the AoE. So even if you miss the Q, it's kind of fine. Whereas like with the other build, you're more reliant on hitting the Q. See here, I bring the ball back because he was so far away from where the ball was.
And wait, is the reason you want to hit the Q on the other builds important? It's for the phase rush. Is that right?
And because like with the other build, like you'll be putting points in Q earlier, whereas here, like I have 2 points in W.
W, I see. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, also versus those other champs, like if you're playing against the melee and they have more sustain, then if you were to play W max against melee, you would just run Ohm. But against the range, like where they don't have D shield, basically, they still honestly are pretty hard to kill, but it's more possible. And this is a Korean challenger Azir, but you'll find that especially in lower elos where people don't have the correct rune setups and people are not dodging like tons of skill shots, like you will just kill people probably.
Yeah. This is his sustaining. So he's still got health potion. I feel like you've hit so many QWs. Is that just the power of second wind?
Second wind is insanely broken, and also unflinching does work on Ori's slow. So a lot of people just take unflinching in almost every matchup at the moment. It's a sleeper OP rune. I've even seen people take it against Azir because like Azir's Q slows.
Interesting. So why not take second wind and flinch in this matchup now? Doesn't that
Yeah,
make
so
you win harder?
you can if you want. I have seen some people do that. Basically, I value having like more aggression because I don't think he should be able to kill me. But like, yeah, you could argue that having more second wind HP and then being able to kind of like use your HP more aggressively could be better. Yeah, it's an option. Basically, I think this is slightly better, but if you went that, I would not. Yeah, I think it's fine.
So in terms of like when you're looking to recall, like are you like just trying to poke this guy down and just get him lane locked and make sure he doesn't get a free TP off, or are you looking to reset on a base gold amount? Like what are you trying to achieve right now?
Yeah, I'm mostly just trying to make sure that he loses something. I kind of just don't want to base before him. I don't really mind when I base as long as he has to base first. I just want to, get that extra wave of gold to spend. And, if that turns into like a refillable advantage or, like something bigger, then that's really, really good. Sometimes like here's kind of where it might be hard to kill him because like he's low HP, so second wind is getting mega value, and I'm definitely getting kind of ooms. So you do have to be a little careful, but I've kind of already done my job in a way. Like I am already quite significantly ahead of him in terms of the
Farm.
CS. So I am going to be
Wait, he's
ahead.
43 farm. He's 43 farm, I think, is he?
Yeah, yeah. But I'm going to get like the +1 wave. So
Oh, I see. Because I see. Okay, yeah. Because he's
yeah,
gonna have to base, and you're gonna deny away from him. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that should give me like a good window to punish like on my first base.
So
Yeah.
about a 10
Because
CS lead, you're happy with that? That's like success for like an Arcane Comet
yeah, well,
game.
I think like a lot of it is that like I've had perma prior, right? Like if you see my Viegas 3-0, like a lot of that is
You've pressured the
enabled by
team.
me having like all
Yes.
the vision. Hecarim can't invade my jungle. I can be at any scuttle first. Like you don't see it here because Hecarim knows that, right? Like he knows
Yeah.
not to fight those things, but
This
just
is a
having
hidden.
mid prior, especially in high-elos, is like incredibly valuable.
Yeah, so this is a hidden thing. Again, this is, I guess, why Arcane Comet seems like a more of advanced concept because, junglers in lower elo aren't really going to capitalize on that prior or whatever, I feel like that's not as going to be as useful. But, it probably still does some hidden aspects, right? That people aren't seeing. But, yeah, the priority seems like it's definitely, that's a huge aspect of this Arcane Comet's setup.
Yeah, and like I said, I think you might find that you'll just straight up kill people in lower elo. But since phase rush is easier to play and scales better, like especially when you're new to Ori, you can probably just take phase rush every game and it's fine. Yeah, this was really annoying. I got auto pathed around the Azir ult,
Yeah, it's
which
annoying when that
made me lose my
happens.
flash. Yeah, that was actually a pretty big mistake because once you have no flashes Ori, like you will get ganked again. So yeah, that you've got to be really careful of that because I was winning really hard, but that lost me a lot of pressure, and
Mm.
I would say it's not good for us overall, right? Like you could argue that Hecarim invested resources, but like now I'm off the map when we're trying to contest topside, and like if I hadn't gotten chunked so hard and I were here, like we would win this fight, right? So in some ways, that was like a game losing mistake that I
Mm.
didn't path correctly around the wall. Because yeah, I definitely could have been here. Like this, in my mind, like losing a fight as chapter to an Azir that has a null magic and recurve is criminal. Like we
It's
we should not
illegal.
have
Yeah.
lost this, but because I misplayed and got chunked too much, that fight ended up being bad.
Very interesting. So yeah, it seems like it's very much, a game of inches here. Like you want to be pushing this, this Arcane Comet. If that's happening, like Azir's probably he's loving life now. He hasn't
Yeah,
died.
I would
He's
say
not. You're not
he's
that far ahead anymore.
yeah, he's very happy. The one thing we do have going for us is that like because he invested into second wind, he doesn't scale quite as well as normal Azir does, but like he definitely still outscales me, right? Like I think we are losing. I mean, I was quite happy to see him buy Mercs. Like if once I saw the Mercs, I think Mercs are useless here, so I was really happy that he kind of wasted his gold. But yeah, I think overall we're probably unhappy with where we're at. But yeah, a lot of it is just like that pressure I lost to that one Hecarim gank. Like that was a pretty big misplay.
They're going to kill the Orianna. No flash Ori. No flash Ori.
Yeah, exactly. So once you lose flash, you should kind of expect to get punished later down the line for it. Having Phase Rush here would make this like way easier because I spend like this entire fight just running away from people basically. And again here when Azir got another kill, I was pissed. Like we're losing fights when Azir is on Merc Treads and I have a 4-0 Viego. And partially, I mean, you could do a little bit of blaming the team and say this was like the top gap or whatever, but realistically, like when I lost my flash to Hecarim, it was pretty game changing. Like we should have won these fights, but I was much weaker than I should have been. Yeah, I think that's most of the laning phase. I can't really remember what happened after this. I think eventually we lose this game from getting outscaled by a Zir Fiora. But I think it's still like a fairly good example of like what you should be aiming for in the laning phase. I do think I guess low rolled the outcome a little bit with Azir getting kills early, but it was at least partially in my control.
Yeah. I mean, team got ahead, right? Like,
Yeah.
the guy was getting bullied. Again, I feel like that. This is quite a good play. He minimized quite well, and
Yeah, he played really well. I think he has like 1300 LP.
I think this, definitely demonstrates the strengths of the Arcane Comet lane phase against range champs.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at some team fighting clips now. Shok, we didn't actually see many team fights in these clips, in these last ones, so we're going to go look at some team fights.
Okay. Yeah, so if you just go to like 20 minutes or, I don't know, somewhere around there. Yeah, maybe like, right here or something.
It's more of like a pick there, I guess. Where's a team fight? Here's a team fight. So I want to get, I guess, the context before the team fight as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think we could talk about the inaction of the team fight's also important, right? So let's go from here. We'll just look at the fights from here. All right, ready?
Yep.
Okay, so let's start off with some high-level principles that you think about when it comes to team fighting with Orianna. You talk about, you really like phase rush in general with Orianna because it sounds like your team fighting becomes a bit easier with this champion. Yep. What are some things you're thinking about?
I'd say probably the most important thing is just make sure you do not die early. Like Orianna is a champ with very high DPS, so it's really important that you're not the kind of champ that can dump all her cooldowns and then be happy dying. Like you need to make sure that you're respecting the key threats, positioning behind your tanks. If you don't have flash, you need to play a little safer. It's totally fine to bowl people in the front line and really recognize like once your front line is gone that you need to be like way safer. You can see here that once our front line died, we basically just peeled back and ran away. So yeah, I think the biggest mistake I see.
Step one with Orianna sounds like step one of team fighting. Have a really good lane phase and make sure you're not fighting like that's step one before you even get.
Yeah, I mean it is just like a fundamental champ, right? Like there isn't a super secret. I would say the biggest mistake I see is people, like trying to greed for the big ult, but like honestly, I don't know. Ori ult's not even her best ability, man. Like Ori Q is so broken. It just does so much damage, and like the W and the shields and stuff. Like if you get a good ult, great, but it's really not required.
So your team's a little bit behind us, yeah. Because I'm very interested to see your the way you think about ults. You actually are quite low mana here, so you're even gonna have enough damage to do enough Qs in this fight.
Yeah, this was definitely an awkward fight. We kind of just had to contest Arcane. I think maybe I could have base TP'd, but yeah, this was a very awkward fight. But like you can see again that I managed to stay behind my team. Now I got a bit cocky and got one shot by Lucian. But for most of this fight, I was really like, see how I'm not willing to walk in here. I'm just trying to play back and like wait for my opportunity because it would have been very easy to just like walk in and get shoved by Talia
here.
And just
they might even flash. They might even flash
right,
like a psychopath. Yeah, look at the patience. You're waiting for everything to happen. There's a really look at that. Even that back step there, you're really patient there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think here, I guess fundamentally you should probably run. But I was thinking, okay, I can beat Lucian, but he literally one-shot me, which was a bit of a surprise. But this was still very good. I mean, I think like I actually got Arcane with my ult as well, which is nice. And at this point, I would say we're in a really, really good spot. Like it might not look like it, but like Camille is actually really strong. And we have Smolder Ori with like a Wukong Alistair frontline. So Honestly, the game's over. Like, I don't know what they're meant to do now. Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
if you
This is
could
actually because
ever,
to talk about TP usage. Let's actually talk about TP. So,
okay,
I mean, obviously, you're going to be side lane in and then TP into a fight, or do you actually need to run to fights? Because sometimes what I hear people say is that they don't like TP into the fight. They like to be there first and controlling the area and all that. Like, what are your view on TP in
yeah.
fights like
So
this?
my feeling is that like I think it's important to be grouped early if it's a fight that you know will happen, like third dragon spawning, fourth dragon spawning, like Atacon being contested or whatever. Like those are the fights where since you know it will happen, it's okay to like recall and be there like 45 seconds before, set up, hold the
Don't
chokes,
side
whatever.
lane. Just run to the fight. Get to the choke. Control
Yeah,
the
exactly.
chokes.
Like what
Control the
you'll normally
area.
do is
Okay.
reset maybe like a minute before they spawn, go home, spend all your money, and then be there. But these random fights, I mean, even though it would be nice to sit with your team the whole game, you can't. Like you have to get golden XP on the side lane. And if your opponent knows what they're doing and you're grouped all the time and they're splitting, like eventually you'll just lose the game. So the way I see it is I try and hold my TP as much as possible. Like TP gives you permission to side lane, but like if a random fight breaks out, and especially if it's a fight where there are objectives to be taken after, like if Baron is up, for example, I kind of just have to come to this. Yeah, that looked fun. Poor Lucian.
This is more of a flank situation. I guess you're probably not flanking that much. It's more front to back with Orianna, or you
Yeah,
can
most of the
flank
time you're going to
sometimes.
be front to back, but like, there are certain champs like Camille or Nocturne or something where if you bowl them before the fight starts, they might be able to take a really good angle that you can just ult off of them or even just like speed them up and stuff. Yeah, I think
There's
it's good
probably
to
gonna
have
be
a
one more
couple like
team
weird
fight.
examples though. This is more normal though for sure. Like being with my ID carry, like
Yep.
behind my tanks.
Yep. So you're more looking to buff up your 80 carry here than yourself. Is that what your mindset is?
AD carry or one of my frontliners. I definitely don't care about buffing
Okay.
myself too much, but like I like buffing Wukong and Camille. But yeah, buffing myself is like pretty. I think it's. I mean, it's not worthless, but it is better used than other people. Like the AD carries and the bruisers use the MS better, and I think. I mean, unless I'm in a vulnerable position, I don't really need to buff myself. Yeah, so this was an interesting fight. I mean, it's a really good start. Like, see here, like bowling the person in the front line. Now, I did misplay
Mm,
this fight a tiny bit. There's a time where Lucian walked forward where I should have just ulted him. But overall, this is really good. Like staying behind my Wukong. I should have ulted Lucian right there in that little instant, but I didn't notice. But this is still like super. I think it's super good. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate that I got hit, but overall, it's like, my Smolder is safe, my Wukong is buffed. And I mean, you can see the fight just. It's so one sided.
this is the winning hard that you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And like I said, I could have played it a little bit better. I did make one position mistake, and I should have used my ult a bit earlier. But as
You saying
long
you
as
should
you
have
keep,
here. You should have the Lucian
no,
right now.
if you notice, like I put the Q on the ground, like right, it's keep going. There's a time where Lucian walks forward, where my ball's on the ground, where I should have just ulted him. I think it's right now. Yeah, I should have ulted him right there. I
Ah,
didn't
I
realize in the
see.
moment,
Yeah.
but I should have ulted him, and I would have one shot him. I'm pretty sure. And then I probably should have kited a little bit further back so I didn't get shoved by Talia, but it was still pretty good. I mean, if they
Yep.
use everything on me when Smolder is this fed, like it is pretty over.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I can sort of see your mindset with the buffing up. Like Wukong was permanently shielded there, so that's really interesting. Because I guess you're not the one taking damage, right? Theoretically. You
Yeah,
should be the
not
one just
really.
sort of like supporting.
Yeah, Ori
Let's
is
look at
kind of like
maybe
Karma, except she just does way more damage.
let's see if there's another fight that we missed over here. Was this? No, this was it. Is there another fight in this one? Maybe a bit too early for team fights here.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of just our team getting destroyed early, like especially Camille
Yeah.
was getting blasted top. Like she has no top turret already.
All right. All right, let's now jump into our matchup tier list section now, Shok.
All right.
Okay, so we've got 4 categories here, Shok. Very hard. Like, what's very hard matchup for you? We're going to start with lane phase. Then hard, then skill, then skill matchup like medium level, and then easy. And then we could do sort of like a tier list where we sort of move people around. Like maybe, for example, like Kassadin is easy in lane, but you don't like playing against Kassadin in the mid to late game or whatever. You can like maybe move some people up. Like what you don't like to see picked on the enemy team as a mid laner holistically.
Yeah, okay.
But let's start with lane matchup, just flat out lane phase.
Okay.
And I guess also it'll be good to see, like, would you take phase rush or Comet against these champs as well?
Yeah.
Ari.
Okay. How much do we want to factor in like the gank setup with like jungle support?
I mean, depends how practical you think that is. That's a really good question because League is not a 1v1 game, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think people like to think it's a 1v1 game. Maybe we just go with the 1v1.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so Ari is super easy for Ori. I mean, you would just crush her in the 1v1. You can definitely get ganked by jungle support, which you need to be careful of, but yeah, the 1v1 is extremely free.
Arcane or
true. Rush? This is kind of up to you. If you really want to destroy lane, you can go Comet. Personally, I would grade phase rush for the scaling, but this is like personal preference. You can run whatever you want here.
Okay, interested about Kali, like assassins. What do you think
so,
about Kali?
I'd say in lane, Akali is very hard. She just has way too much sustain. Now, the thing is, there's like a couple different things you can do. So you can, if you want, you can go airy against Akali just because she's a melee and you can proc it over and over. And that does make the lane phase easier, but you can never actually kill her. So I think you should always go phase rush into Akali, but that does make the laning phase very hard. Like she just has electrocute with taste of blood. She's got D shield sustain. She's got second wind sustain. She's just impossible to kill.
Akshan.
Akshan is probably hard. I wouldn't say he's very hard. This is a matchup where you kind of need Comet in order to trade back. So yeah, I'd say a hard matchup overall, but you do outscale.
I assume Anivia is a Comet matchup. You want to just obliterate this guy in lane?
Yeah, I think you should go Comet versus Anivia. I would say she's a skill matchup. It's pretty easy early, but post 6, it starts to become really hard. She has a lot of wave clear in your very short range. So if you get a really big lead pre-6, you'll probably find it easy. But I think a very good Anivia will make it hard. And then after 6, you can kind of struggle.
Does Annie have a lot of kill threat on you?
Annie is really easy in the 1v1, but if they have a ganking jungle and a ganking support, it can be really hard. But yeah, you should crush Annie in the 1v1.
Aurelion Sol typically quite weak lane phase. People know that for.
ASOL I'd say is probably easy. Okay, so there is one thing with ASOL, which is that if you if you get into a position where he can just W down or he can like chase you and you have no creeps in front of you, you're going to lose a lot of health. But if you keep the wave pushed and you make sure that he never really has the opportunity to W onto you, you should find it pretty easy.
Aurora mid lane, we don't really see that much anymore nowadays. But
Aurora 1v1 pretty easy, but she has extremely good gank setup. So another champ that you should just absolutely annihilate with Comet. You can go phase rush for better scaling here if you want, kind of just up to you. Really, it's just about making sure that you're aware of where the jungler is post 6.
We just saw an Azir game. Would that easy Comet?
I'd say just easy Comet. I think that, again, it's like he outscales you and he has good ganks, but overall it's pretty easy.
Bran, not really a popular pick.
I haven't seen Bran in ages. I think with Comet second wind, it should be pretty easy. Yeah, I haven't played against the champ in ages, though.
Another one of your mains, Shok?
Cassio is super, super easy for the most part. Now, I have been playing a lot of Q-Max Cassio into Ori, which makes it more playable. But I think overall, like, Ori kind of destroys Cassio. Now, if you're confident in the matchup, I would take Comet. If you're not confident, I'd go phase rush, because if you get caught by Cassio with nothing up and you don't have phase rush to run away, you can be in trouble. But if you play it well and you can just spam your QWs and stuff, she shouldn't really have a window to run you down.
Corki, we don't really have the ADC mid sort of meta, but Corki sort of still is around. How do you fight? How do you go against sort of ADC mid lanes?
So Corki, I would honestly say for almost everyone watching this video, Corki is going to be very, very easy. But I would say in high-elo, Corki is actually pretty hard. Like, he's very, very strong early. He's a great fleet user, and he can rush boots. So he can dodge a lot of your skill shots, but, like, the opponent has to be really good, basically. But, like I said, for all intents and purposes, I think you should put him in easy, because for most of you guys, like, doesn't matter, Comet for lane, phase rush for scaling, up to you, you'll just destroy him.
Diana.
Yeah, I'll put Diana in skill, I think. So this is definitely a phase rush matchup. You should be fine. Most of this matchup is just about dodging Q, which admittedly is not super easy. But if you keep the wave like more or less in the middle, you dodge some of the Qs, you should be okay.
Echo? I feel like sort of maybe sort of
Yeah,
like a similar to a Diana.
yeah, I'd say Echoes and skills. So this is a matchup where if you have the wrong runes, you will be in big trouble. You need bone plating against Echo. It's non-negotiable. Otherwise, you can start E and just you just lose the game level one. I would go phase rush in this matchup personally. If you want more pressure, you could go airy maybe, but I would just go phase rush resolve. I think it's better.
Fizz fits our assassin category, but
Yeah,
Fizz,
this
where would
this
Fizz
should be
go?
hard. I would say. I think that the problem with Fizz, well, okay, first off, I would go Phase Rush Resolve. Again, if you want stronger lane, Airy Resolve is an option because he can't build D Shield, which is nice. The problem with Fizz is even if you end up winning the 1v1, Fizz has probably the best gang setup of like almost any melee assassin. So there's a really good chance you get ganked. Now, if you don't get ganked, you should start to win, especially later in the lane. But this is a pretty dicey one. If you can avoid it, I would, but it's not unplayable.
I'm just at this
Um,
one, Galio. What
I
about
think Galio
Galio?
is extremely easy. I would say
Mhm.
that I don't know. It's you should definitely play full scaling versus Galio. Like make sure you have phase rush, gathering, precision. You're probably never going to kill him, but you outscale him really hard. And this is kind of one that depends on his team comp. You know, like if he has something like Galio, Jarvan, Camille, Rakan, like good luck in esports. You know, like you won't be able to play the game. But Galio just isolated, you're shitting him 1v1, you're shitting him side lane, you outscale him really hard. It will be very easy unless he has the right champs around him.
So where does Quay go? Do you go
Uh,
Comet or Phase Rush?
Up to you, really. Again, it's kind of the same thing where if you want more scaling, you can go Phase Rush. I like Phase Rush for Sway, but you can't go common shit in the lane. I would say this matchup is easy. Yeah, I don't think it's particularly hard.
Karma mid, people don't really play, but where would Karma go?
Yeah, Karma, I don't know. I'd probably say overall she's easy. The thing is, like, Karma is just really good early, but she falls off a cliff really fast. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think easy.
Aurelia. I'm
Yeah, this is
assuming maybe
very
more on
hard.
the hard. Very hard,
This
okay.
matchup is insanely difficult. I've played against a Rel King a few times lately, and I'm sick of this champ. I think that definitely go Phase Rush. Um, I think probably worth taking bone plating as well, although she can actually proc it a little easier. But at this point, you just need as much early game as you can to try and live. Now you will probably outperform Aurelia in the side lane, and honestly, outside of Challenger, the Aurelias are like very bad at playing the game past 10 minutes. So if you go down 20 CS to Aurelia, you're probably winning. But if the Aurelia
Okay.
really knows what you're doing, it's gonna be miserable.
Okay. I would say assume Cassidon is very easy for you
Yeah,
in the lane.
Cassidy is so free. This champ sucks. Like you go phase rush. I'd go gathering storm. There's no point having scorch really when he has the sustain. Go precision as well. Like bone plating doesn't do anything for you. You should just have like perma prior. You win the lane. If you go Seraphs, you'll probably win the side lane as well until he has like 4 items or something. So yeah, I think it's so easy to play against.
I assume Kale fits the same category.
Yeah, Kale is basically the exact same. Now, the one thing that can be a little dicier with Kale is she has a lot of movement speed, which means that even with Comet, a lot of the time you'll miss the Comet. So even if you think you can punish early, it's probably better to go phase rush anyway. But yeah, this champ's super easy. Like, unless you waste your phase rush post 6 and she can chase you down or something, there really is no kill threat. And honestly, in team fights, it's so hard for Kale to play an Ori. She's just too short range.
Yeah. Okay, this is sort of a category of champions. Definitely that I see maybe more so common in like in the bronze, silver tiers with
Yeah.
Lux, Morgana, Valkos, and Malzahar. Are these where would these go?
Yeah, okay, so Mal's definitely easy. Mal's is super free. Now, a lot of people struggle with Mal's, which I think is because of two things. One, they don't punish his cooldowns. Like, the thing with Mal's is he has to use his cooldowns to push, and that leaves him vulnerable to getting traded on. Also, if you kill his Voidlings the moment they spawn, just with your Q and autos, he loses all his push. So that match is really easy. If you're against a very good Vel'Koz, I'd actually say the matchup is hard if the Vel'Koz
Wow.
is really good, but I've
Yeah.
literally only versed like two good Vel'Kozes in my entire life. So
Yeah.
you'd probably find that if you just take Comet, you'll probably destroy them most of the time. But yeah, like in theory, I think if they're really good, it can be hard. Morgana, super easy. This champ is kind of similar to
Just
Mal's, like has to use cooldowns to push, and you can punish. Lux, I would maybe put Lux in skill. So the problem is that Lux is actually really strong early with like Comet and Cheap Shot and stuff. And once she's 6, she can just like neutralize every wave by ulting it. Now you should be able to get a pretty big lead pre-6, but the problem is post-6 you now can't really do anything into her anymore. So I don't know. Like the thing is you outscale Lux, so like you're not super worried, but it's actually a pretty annoying champ. I really hate playing against Lux.
interesting. Veigar's like another one, like sort of
Yeah,
again, a bit
super
more popular
easy.
lower ranks. Super easy, yeah.
Yeah.
Katarina?
I would say Cat's probably skill. I think like here's the thing. So like 1v1, I'd say it's pretty favored to Ori, but the only issue is like you don't have a really good way of hitting your ult. Like it's very easy for her to dodge it. So once she hits 6, the balance of power definitely kind of goes towards her, and you kind of have to make sure that you've built enough of a pre-6 lead to stop her from just roaming post-6, but you're also kind of playing without your ult. So yeah, overall, I'd still be pretty happy playing Orianna Cat, but it is one of the more annoying champs to play against.
LeBlanc. Where does this champ go?
Okay, so this one is if you're really good at Ori, I would say this is winning for the Ori, but a lot of people will struggle with LeBlanc. So LeBlanc, you require very specific response. So first off, you need Airy, not Comet, because you can't hit Comet against LeBlanc. She has too many dashes. Next, you have to have bone plating. It's like, yeah, you just got to have it. You need to make sure that she doesn't proc your bone plating with an auto unless she uses her W. This matchup, the key to it is that her W has a 15-second cooldown and you can punish when it's down. But if you if you lose your bone plating for free or something, and then you just get traded on by Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Scorch, like you will just get destroyed. And she has really good gank setup. So it's a very dicey matchup, but it is Ori favored if you really know what you're doing.
So skill or hard then? It sounds more maybe.
I would say it's skill, but I don't know. Like it's okay. The way I'd
players
see
could
it
feel
is
like it's hard. This could be
yeah,
hard for some
probably. It's
players.
probably easier for the LeBlanc to play it than the Ori, but I think in higher skill brackets, it is Ori favored.
Okay, so happy with skill. We'll just put it in the
I
middle.
think
We
it's
can't.
fine.
We can't decide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lysandra.
This matchup is okay. 1v1, super easy. It's just again like, do they have ganks? I'd put it in easy overall. There are certain combos like Lysandra, I don't know, Lysandra, Lee Sin, Leona, where you're gonna be really miserable. But in the 1v1, it's pretty good. I would just take Comet and punish, or you can go phase rush for scaling. I think that one's up to you.
New mid lane champ. Sort of
Yeah,
played his bot lane as well. Mal.
I'd say super easy. Like this champ, cooldowns are really long, really easy to dodge them. You can punish a lot early. Just got to be careful getting caught by the E, but if you play it well, it's pretty easy.
Sounds like sort of fits the same category as like Morgana and Malzar and stuff.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. Too cooldown reliant. Nico.
Yeah, I'd put Nico in skills. So Nico is it kind of feels like the other mages, like it plays the same, but she just does like 20% more damage than other champs. So she falls off really hard, but in lane, Nico is actually kind of a beast. And I would definitely take Comet Resolve against this champ and probably go like second wind unflinching. If you get through lane being even, I'd say the game is basically over, but you will probably feel it in the early game.
Rise.
Rise super easy. He's too short range to do anything. Unless you get like flash EW'd at level 3 with a Lee Sin or something, like you'll never die. It's super easy.
So we've got some melee ones here. Let's do the melee ones. So Pantheon, Silas that we watched, and Yasuo.
Yeah, okay. So
and Yone.
Pantheon, I would say take bone plating, take phase rush. This matchup is pretty easy, I would say, unless you like control your wave badly and die to ganks. Like you'll Giga outscale, and the 1v1's pretty good. So Pantheon's easy. Silas, if they know what they're doing, I want to say is hard. Yeah, I kind of want to say.
So that Silas that you first had no idea what they were doing. Is
well, I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I even played against Scout Silas, and Scout's world champion, and I still felt, I don't know. Maybe we should put it in skill. The thing is, like, I've watched a lot of this matchup lately, and I've watched I watched Chovy, for example, play against that, the other really good Ori in Korea, and the matchup looks pretty good for Silas. Like the thing is that if the Silas plays it well, he is virtually unkillable, and he has really good gank setup. Now, you guys will probably find that you'll probably shit on the Saras, especially in lower elos, because they won't know what they're doing with wave control at all. I think this is another one where maybe at the very highest level of play, it's actually Saras favored, but honestly, for most of you guys, it's going to be skill to easy. It's not too bad.
Yone.
Yeah, Yarn should be hard. So this champ has way too much sustain for you to actually kill. You should play Phase Rush, Gathering, Precision. You need to really focus on just Q harass and wave control, like making sure it's in the middle or on your side after level 3. This champ is super annoying. Now, you will be much stronger than him in team fights, but the 1v1 in the side lane is really, really tough. But yeah, you have that really big team fight win condition.
And then the other ones was Yasuo and Talon.
Okay, so Yasuo is very, very hard in the 1v1. This champ is almost unbeatable. It's kind of like Aurelia. Now, the thing is that you absolutely destroy Yasuo in team fights, but his like 1v1 and his side lane is like, yeah, it's almost Aurelia tier. So in terms of overall win rate, I think you'll probably have a pretty good win rate as Ori versus Yasuo, but the 1v1 is miserable. Like, just go Phase Rush Precision. If you're down 20 CS, you're probably winning. Just wait for him to, lose team fights to you, and it should be fine.
So you're activating full scaling mode. And
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, that champ is so
phase.
bullshit.
Just cop the lane phase.
Yeah.
And then Talon.
I'd put Talon in skill. So this is another one where, like, if you're against a noob Talon, you'll actually just destroy them. Like, if the Talon doesn't know the windows to play aggressive, it'll be super easy. But the thing with Talon is that a lot of Talons will try and cheese you. So, for example, like, some Talons will start Q in this matchup with a left Q, and they'll literally just Q on you level 1. If you have bone plating, makes this a lot easier. I think you should go Phase Rush. You can go Airy, but I think being able to kite away from Talon's orders is pretty important. So, yeah, I like just Phase Rush Resolve. And this is another champ where if you don't lose the game in the first 10 minutes, you probably get a free win. But you can definitely die in the first 10 minutes. This is probably the matchup with the biggest argument for buying a Catalyst and sitting on it. Like, literally doing something like tier, Catalyst, Seraphs, and just like not even upgrading your Catalyst. Like, it's that kind of matchup where he is just so strong early, but if he doesn't win, then I mean, he'll be useless.
Have you played much against the new reworked Neferi?
Yes, I've played against it once. So I've seen a lot of people say this matchup is good for Neferi because you can dodge Ori W, but the problem is like the Ori Q spam, like you just end up pushing Neferi out of lane. So I'd say this is easy, but there is like room for failure, I guess, like if you overextend or something, like you can die. But I think if you just go Phase Rush, and I mean, you can take bone plating if you're confident you can dodge the Qs. Otherwise, just play precision. It should be pretty easy.
Swain seems quite low range. You just cut this guy.
Yeah, super easy. Just go Phase Rush. If he ever, as long as you don't get caught too far up in the lane without Phase Rush, then like you're fine basically.
All right, let's do some of these classic mages here, like Syndra, Talia, Victor. I guess we could throw Seraph in here. Where would Syndra go? We'll start with.
So Syndra would be hard. Syndra outranges you, has really good gank setup, and you can sometimes win early. Like, it is kind of like a skill shot check. Can you dodge enough skill shots? But once she hits like level 8 or so and gets the 2 Q charges, it's going to be really, really tough. It's not basically the way I'd see it is if you end up versus Syndra, it's definitely not game over. And in team fights, if you have someone to buff, it's fine. But it is pretty hard. Talia is pretty easy. If you take Comet, you will absolutely destroy Talia. If you want, you can go Phase Rush for more scaling. It just kind of depends on the comp. Like, if they have a lot of melees, you might want to play Phase Rush anyway. But yeah, a Comet Ori will decimate Talia.
This is a very popular matchup over the years, right? Victor Orianna in Worlds and stuff like that. Where would Victor go?
Yeah, so I'd say after Victor's rework, he is either hard or very hard. This champ is insanely difficult to play against. Like, he has no skill shots to dodge. He's insanely strong in lane. I think you kind of have to play full early game, like Comet second wins, just because if you don't, the game will just be over before you get a chance to play. So yeah, I don't know. I actually banned Victor. I would ban Victor as Ori if it's a common champ that you play against, because unlike a lot of these other champs that are hard for Ori, Victor actually scales very well as well. So I try and avoid this matchup. The thing is, though, like, the real answer to Victor is jungle support. So, again, if you're playing like Ori, Nocturne, Rel, Victor won't be able to play the game. But in the 1v1, it's pretty miserable.
Seraph. I feel like Seraph might fit a Lux category a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say it's skill. Like you can punish Zareth pretty hard early. It can kind of get annoying, but it's yeah, it's kind of just like a skill shot check. It's not too bad.
Where the hell does Twisted Fate go?
Easy. I think TF is super free unless you die to a
Okay.
bunch of ganks. Super easy.
Vlad?
Yeah, so this is one people struggle with a lot. I think Vlad's easy, but if you mismanage your mana, I could see Vlad being very hard. Like it's really important that you're mana efficient. So in this matchup, I would again Phase Rush or Comet, up to you. I like Phase Rush. Make sure that you don't use your W too much, or if you do, wait until you have like a lot of mana. Mostly just focus on the Q spam. Don't buy Healing Cut; it's a bait into Vlad, and you should just be able to beat him if you
Yep.
just rush mana.
People are going to get their mind blown when you say don't build Healing Card Oblivion Orb.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, everyone. Oblivion Orb's fake news.
Vex.
This matchup is, I'd say, easy overall. It can be deceptively difficult, but I think it's kind of like, okay, the difficulty of Vex, at least in my mind, is that you don't play against Vex very often. But overall, like the matchup's pretty good for you. Like you will win trades, especially as you get later in the lane. I think level 1 can be a bit hard, but outside of that, it's pretty easy.
Zed, our assassin sort of category, or is Zed a bit different?
I would put Zed in hard. So this one, I will say, depends a lot on if Zed knows the right setup to run. So I think if Zed doesn't have TP and D shield, this matchup's actually very easy. Like you can poke him out, it's super chill. Now, if Zed takes like D shield and second wind and then plays scaling rather than electrocute, like if he goes Conqueror or First Strike, I think this matchup is really hard. Like you can't kill him, and he's really good into you in team fights and side lane. But I don't know. I will say like I farm most Zeds because they just have no idea what runes and shit to take. But if they take the right stuff, I do think the matchup's quite hard.
Ziggs, don't really see this much anymore.
Yeah, I will be honest. I have not played against the Ziggs in literal years. I suspect that it's easy with Comet, but if I'm honest, I actually don't know. Like I haven't played against this champ in ages.
What about mid beast Zoe? Have you played against Zoe with
I have played against a billion Zoe one tricks on career recently.
Oh, is there a lot of there is? I've heard a lot. There's a lot of them over there.
Yeah, so there's an infestation, and they always take electrocute ignite. I will say, I'll probably put it in skill. So the thing is, this matchup is overall Ori favored, but the problem is that like you get hit by one bubble, you lose 80% of your health. She picks up an ignite or an exhaust or a rocket belt, suddenly the matchup completely changes. So I hate playing this matchup despite having like a 90% win rate versus Zoe or something, because it's so just not RNG, but it's just so volatile. Like one thing goes wrong and you're cooked. Now, I do actually think that Ori is really getting in Zoe later in the game too, because Zoe really struggles with tanks. And, again, if you're like buffing someone, imagine like a Wukong with Ori, E, and W on her. It's so useless or so impossible for Zoe to play. So
unplayable.
I would be very happy playing this, but there is a very high chance of dying if you misplay.
All right, well, the last one's here, sort of the stragglers here. Honorable mentions. Tristana, Tristana, that was a big meta. Orianna versus Tristana in the ADC. Where's our AD carries?
Yeah, I'd say this is skill. This is one where if you're versus a bad Trist, it's super easy, but the very good Tristanas, similar to Corki, are really good at using their movement speed and their sustain and just constantly pushing you in. I think overall, yeah, for most of you guys, you'll probably destroy Tristanas. I think it is worth going Comet. I did try going Phase Rush in this champ, but you actually can't get away in time before she gets the bomb off, so it doesn't really make a difference. So yeah, just go Comet.
And probably Kiana's like the only other one that's probably maybe a bit popular as a mid laner here.
Yeah,
Kiana go?
Kiana's pretty easy. If you go Phase Rush
easy.
Resolve, like yeah, you shouldn't really have any trouble.
Do you play as Jace? Is Jace a mid laner?
Okay, when Jace was meta, I'd say this was like an easy matchup overall, but I have not seen Jace in ages. Like Jace just gets played top every game, or he's banned. Like Jace is almost permanently banned in Korea. Champ is super broken, so yeah, you probably just play Comet and just kind of destroy him. You shouldn't really have any issues.
So easy.
Yeah.
Okay, unless there's any more you want to talk about this. Do you want to talk about any of these ones?
No, I think we can get rid of those. I don't see them at all.
All right, so as we can see here, we have a lot of easy matchups.
Yeah, overall, like Ori is a lane bully, so like you will win most matchups.
Okay, would you move any of these around when it came to mid to late game?
I would move Akali up one because Akali both team fights and side lanes pretty well into you, and she's like hard to punish early. I really, really don't like this matchup. Although, yeah, I don't know. This is one that kind of depends on comp because, for example, if you have a comp like, I don't know, Ori, Jinx, Lulu, or some shit, like Akali will be so worthless later on. But if, for example, you have Ori, Jhin, and like, I don't know, Nautilus or something, then Akali will very reliably kill your Jhin. And even if she doesn't, like, you really lack the scaling DPS. So I try and avoid this matchup if possible. Um, is there anything else I would
What
move?
about Kassadin? People always
No,
say level 16 Kassadin,
well,
they're
I don't know.
terrified.
Here's the thing: like, if you're bad at laning, you'll probably really struggle with Kassadin. But I have just absolutely obliterated every Kassadin I've met for the last like 2 years, like both in EU and Korea. So I don't
So there's
know.
no
Like, if you,
excuse. There's no excuse to be losing to Kassadin because the
not
late
really,
phase is too
no.
dominant.
Yeah, I think you should be like pretty consistently like 30 CS ahead, and like, or if he's itemized full early game like with runes, then he doesn't scale, and like you have perma prior, you get to all the fights first. I don't know, like if you get unlucky, like I will say that sometimes Castleton could just pick up a random 2 kills, and then it could get very hard. But I suspect if you play well, you have a very high win rate as Ori versus Castleton.
Vlad was another champ you were a bit iffy on. You said people struggle versus Vlad. Does this
Yeah, I
get
think
even
the
harder into late
average
game?
player really struggles with Vlad. I don't know. To me, this is like less a champion thing and more just like people have no idea how to play against Vlad. So Vlad is mainly a mana check, like making sure you're efficient with it, that you're rushing mana, that you're not throwing out too many abilities randomly, stuff like that. But I do think the matchup is quite easy, but there's a lot of I think again, just like Vlad's a very unique champion, and most players don't play against Vlad very often or haven't played long enough to have experienced Vlad being meta.
Hmm.
So yeah, if you're new to Ori, you actually probably will struggle quite a lot with Vlad, but it gets a lot easier, I think.
Any other mentions here? Zia, you said could be tricky, outscales you.
Yeah, this is another one where like I don't know. For most people watching this video, like no one below Challenger is any good at Azir,
Yeah,
so
Zia's a hard champ.
yeah, I wouldn't even worry about it. I
All
think
right, we
just
keep him an easy.
yeah. Um
Okay. Anything else?
yeah, I think it's kind of good. Like I mean, ultimately, just because the champ is like a fundamental check, if your laning fundamentals are weak, you might have very different experiences of matchups. But like if you are both good at laning and good at Ori, you will win lane almost every game.
All right, awesome. Okay, Shok. Now let's use everything you've taught us, we've learned so far in this video, and apply it to an Emerald Orianna player.
All right.
Okay, OPGG review first. I want to get your thoughts, opinions on our Orianna friends build. Got a very similar champ pool to you here. Orianna Cassiopeia. This is like a mini Shok here.
Yeah, it's
57
respectable.
games, 61% win rate. So honestly, Orianna potentially their best champion.
Yep.
What are you seeing here? We're actually going to be reviewing. We're going to be looking at this 3-7-12 game. So I guess we can start with this person's build. This is a Luden's enjoyer. And that
Yeah.
analytics.
Yeah, okay. I don't hate the Ludens. I will say overall, I do think the runes and itemization, maybe not so much this game, but just overall, I do think you're making life kind of hard for yourself. Like that game versus Akali, for example, the 4-9-6 one, like having no phase rush here is really rough. And also
Yeah.
like no health or magic resist or anything to speak of versus Akali at least. Like that to
It's
me,
mental.
like you're
Death
just gonna
Cap
have
Rush
to
second.
yeah, you're just
Holy.
have to be the best player in the world to play this game with no phase rush, no Seraphs, no Banshee, no Merc, just nothing. So yeah, I think you should not go airy every game would be my biggest advice.
Yeah.
And definitely, yeah, there's lots of games where there should be like phase rush, and there's lots of games where you should have resolve too. Overall, I do also hate your builds. Like I think okay, double mana items like going say Seraph Luden is not bad, but the problem with it is that it means you can't buy any other items that you might need. Like you basically have to go death cap straight after. And like this game, or sorry, the game above it, 355, and the game below it, if you're going Zonya third, it's like what we talked about earlier in the video. Like you've just opted into doing no damage. And I mean, if you want to do no damage, just play Lulu or something, because this is not the champ for this.
And especially this comp. What are we Zonya's in here? What are we
Yeah,
afraid of?
that's true as well. I don't. Yeah, I don't really think there's any point. I think the only things I really consider ZHONYA against are like Zed Karthus combo or
Mm.
potentially like, I don't know, Karthus ult with an AD, some other AD mid like Talon, or maybe like Vi with an AD mid or something. But I almost never buy it.
Yeah. Okay, so it seems like the big one here, there's just no that resolve. We're just rushing area. I mean, absolutely. We got, even this is the Oblivion. Oh, Oblivion Orb. Would you like it? This is the versus Vlad narrative here. Oh,
Uh,
Yumi. This might be okay. This is going to be
it
okay,
depends
right?
when he bought it. I think it's not a
Okay,
bad
let's
buy,
have a
but it
look.
depends when he bought it.
Oh
Okay, I don't
god,
mind
it's the
it. He
21
bought it
minutes. Oh,
after
you don't.
Death
Is this
Cap.
fine?
I mean, I don't
Okay,
hate it.
okay,
Like
okay.
because he got it after Death Cap, I don't super hate it. But yeah, if he'd bought it before Death Cap, I think I would have had to ban him.
So, definitely a lot of, we won't go too much into it. We have definitely a lot of things that we talked about in the build section here. We're literally seeing here, like, yeah, we're seeing, well, this guy's ballsy with Magi's, by the way. I was going to say, this guy's
Yeah,
getting
that is pretty
Magi's.
alpha. I respect that.
Dark Seal at 12 minutes.
Yeah, it's still fine. I mean, it doesn't
Still
matter.
fine?
Like, as long as you have it at some point, it doesn't bother me.
Okay. All right, well, let's look at the gameplay now here, Shok. So, obviously, we've talked about, the build here. So what would you go here against a Hui?
Yeah, so I think here I probably would have gone Phase Rush, and my reasoning would be that I think okay, the laning phase you can play basically whatever you want here, but I think Phase Rush into like Phase Rush is going to make the side lane against Shen, Evelyn, or Hui way easier because like Evelyn makes side laning very difficult, and like I said, just not side laning isn't really an option. Like you do have to side lane. That's just like how the game works. So personally, I would have gone Phase Rush just to make that easier. If you went, I don't mind Airy though. Like as long as you win lane with this, I don't mind. But if you go even in lane with Airy, you're in big trouble. Like this does not scale very well.
Yeah, I mean, even though you're saying that, though, everything that I've listened to you this episode, Shock, it sounds like you just want people to just play Phase Rush Ori. You're gonna
It
have a
is so
way
much
easier time.
easier. Yeah.
It's so much easier. Don't make the game so hard, especially playing in Emerald Platinum. You don't need to do this stuff to win games. Let's just be strong and just play for the mid game. I feel.
Yeah.
All right, so let's. What are some early lane reference points here against the Hui? What are we looking to do?
I think really important to like get the push and then like harass and CS. Like one big mistake Ori has made already is she was too late to lane. You should not be letting Hui hit the minion wave before you. So like here, like Hui gets like 3 autos before Ori even touches the wave.
Yeah.
That's really, really bad. Like the lane is already in a very bad spot. And like Ori's level 1's very good. So you should be able to take control. And honestly, if you walk up at like 130 and you take a Hui QQ, if that gives you push, it's worth it. Like don't worry too much about the health. Worry mostly about getting the push because if you're the one in control, it'll be so much easier to harass and punish and everything. So overall, just too passive so far.
Yeah.
Like you've really got to be abusing harder.
Okay, so yeah, so it looks like we're just not utilizing this rune setup at all here. It's a bit concerning already, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it wouldn't be so bad if you're playing Phase Rush, but if you are running Airy, like you've got to just stomp your opponent. Like you do not scale. I mean, you have a Jinx, maybe you scale just because Jinx scales. So yeah, this feels pretty bad. Like I think that I don't know, like being full mana at level 3 seems like really. I don't know. That never happens to me. And also, I would definitely go 2 points W here. Like if you are pulling your mana, it would be so you can like really heavily harass with W level 3. I think there's like basically no point going E at level 3 unless you have Phase Rush because that allows you to proc it much easier. But like just spamming out QWs with 2 points in it and with Airy, like you will be hitting this guy really hard. That was pretty good though. Nice E. You got the E damage. Oh, nice. Okay. That's pretty good.
So you say that dying as a mid lane is very punishing. This is a disastrous for Hawaii. You're going to miss a cannon as well. So Ori's at a great position here, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think Ori probably could have been greedy and shoved one more wave. Depends how scared you are of Evelyn. I think you could have, but
yeah,
up to you. Okay, for me, I would also go Seraph's this game. So I think that it is unrealistic to position around Evelyn. Like overall, it's a pretty good Luden's game because there are some range champs, but there's a pretty heavy melee front line too. Like there's the Thresh and there's the Shen, so like having extra haste from Blackfire or Seraph is pretty valuable. And like I said, I think there are certain abilities in this game and champs like Evelynn that are just kind of like it's unrealistic to position around her. Like some
Mm-hmm.
things can be dodged for sure, but like the way to position around Evelynn is to sit in your base. And again, that's not an option, right? Like you do have to pressure the map. So I would have gone Seraph. I think that the lack of Seraph and Phase Rush do make this game way like you have to play way better than you should have to. And like Hui in comparison, he just needs to do nothing.
Do you really, you say you think that refillable potions OP? I didn't see the base amount, but would you really like? I mean, I guess we have 2 health potions.
Yeah, I
So
think
it's
he had his
fine.
pots. If he didn't though,
Yeah,
like then he definitely should have bought refillable because yeah,
refill.
200
Yeah.
health for 150 gold when a ruby crystal is like 150 health for 400 gold. Refillable is just so broken. It's second best item in the game behind Darksteel. Guess isn't too bad. I think he's getting reasonable harass in these longer range matchups though. Like that is kind of why you want like 2 points in W because it's like you just don't get to hit Q as often, so most of your damage does come from QW harass. You can even 3 points W if you want. It just depends.
Hmm.
How much landing strength do you want versus skirmishing power? I like only putting 2 points in W because I find skirmishes start very quickly, but maybe that's just a career thing. Like I do think the landing phase is a bit more extended on Western servers.
I saw, maybe this is not a relevant point, but I saw you warding here a lot more than here. What do you think about this then,
Yeah,
or is
so
it fine?
normally I think warding in that bush is pretty bad. I normally what I do is I try and ward in the middle of the river. So like just kind of yeah, just like slap bang in the middle of the river.
Literally
No,
here.
no, I mean like
Oh,
between the
like
two rivers.
here.
Yeah, like there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that like being able to have more time to respond is really good. If you have a pink in the side bush, then you can start to ward over the wall. I like to use pinks to move my like green wards further, but yeah, I almost never yellow ward that bush because I mean, just by the time you see someone on the bush, normally it's just too late anyway. And it's also a very stealthish ward, I guess. Like it doesn't help your team at all. It only helps you, and it doesn't even really help you that much.
Yeah, this one helps your team a lot. This is a really valuable one. I like this a lot as a jungler. Seeing that, that gives me a lot of information, potentially.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm looking to do dragon. But I mean, if RevDev here is following your principle of warding to the side that their team is, right? Or the pressuring, right? So
Yeah.
is that... It's good.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's better than nothing. And like I say, normally, I think warding, like 90% of it is just placing it, right? So, like, as long as he's placing
Yeah.
a ward and hugging to it, I don't hate it too much. But if you truly do want to min max it, I think place it a bit further out. But it's not bad.
All right, this could be a good fight. Good ult here. Let's have a look.
Okay.
I like the not rushing ult. I feel this
Yeah, that
looks
was
okay.
good.
This looks awesome.
Nice, yeah. Oh my god.
Getting beat up by the dragon. This dragon was doing damage.
Okay,
I think
yeah.
that was great, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
that
no,
really
I
well
think he
played? Like
played
the
the team
patience
fight
ult?
really fucking well. I think he played it
What a
really well.
beast.
The only thing I would say is that, a lot of what makes Ori strong is that because she's such a strong laner, normally you will be the one being at the fights first, right? Or if you remember back to the Silas game, like I was preventing him to enter the river.
Mm.
Now, so I don't know if yeah, I'm not sure quite how Hui got in here. Maybe he wasn't. Yeah, like I kind of feel like your laning is a bit weak, and so that's making it so Hui is able to move for free. Like
Mm.
that shouldn't really happen. But I will
Okay.
say that once he was actually in the fight, I mean, like this was very very high level team fight. I think he played it super
Yeah.
super well.
This is not what I expected at all from an Emerald Orianna ult
Yeah, no,
usage.
that was pretty sick.
Okay, so I mean, our team's killing it here.
Yeah,
We gotta find out what goes wrong, horribly wrong this game.
yeah, it's definitely looking good. Like I would have said the game is over. So I am curious what happens. Okay, not bad. Yeah, wow, no, I can't believe this game is a loss. Like the more I look at the comps, I just can't
This
fathom
looks
losing
awesome,
this
right?
game.
Like you have your tank. You said you liked buffing up tanks and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
I
and
mean,
you've
you've
got
got
Jinx.
Jinx, you've
You
got
said Jinx is
tanks.
the best AD carry. You love playing with Jinxes as
Yeah,
Orianna.
and then you've got like Zac into like double AP mid jungle. They have like an Ashe, you know. Like I just I don't know how you lose. I'm really really curious. Okay, we secure the grubs. Be a little careful doing that. You normally shouldn't give prior to do grubs. Like you should get prior
Mm,
and then help your jungler.
mm.
Because here, the problem you have is even if you secure the grubs, Hui gets either a free base or more importantly, he gets a move bot. Like if Hui went bot lane with Evelyn right now and killed Jinx the moment she gets back to lane, you're in big trouble. And like if you're the person that's winning, you shouldn't have to do that. Like you get the prior and make the play. You don't have to like coin flip anything. So I don't like that. And I really don't think, okay, you got away with it, but Hui could have gone bot, and that would have really, really sucked for your team. Okay, it's fine though.
So this is just mage, like 8 minutes plus. Just clear
Yeah,
wave, clear wave.
yeah. I think once you're at this point, there's not much you can do to really punish the Hui. Your window's kind of over, which is fine. I mean, you're happy to scale. I think with like who's gotten strong on their team. You know, as long as none of their tank killers are strong, I think you're fine to scale. It would be a lot better. Like you would feel way more confident though with Phase Rush. Okay, I think this is a game losing play. Let's not do
This
this.
is
So
pretty bad, Rome. Yeah,
yeah,
with
this
no
is something
ult.
I see all the time. So
Yeah,
here
interesting.
now the roam timing is not bad, but the problem is so one, Zac is dead. Two, you have a million gold. Three, you have no ult and no flash, and like you're half HP. So you just need a recall here. Like you have 5 kills worth of gold in your inventory and no ult, no flash, and you want to fight. Like that's insane. You know, this is and I see this a lot. Like a lot of the time, the more like bad plays you make, the more good plays you have to make up for it, right? But a
Mm.
lot of the time you can just do nothing, and that's actually like the best answer, right? Like you can just go base here and you're chilling.
Maybe we're going to see a pattern here where they think they have to like do crazy things or impact the map or compensate with their team. Like, you know, that Zac grubs, like give him priority for that. Just happy to
Yeah.
do that. Or, you know, not really thinking about the, like, you know, pinning down Quay and not, you know, resetting, get back on the map and keep pressuring. Like, it's like we have to, it's like this person thinks that they don't scale or something. You know, it feels like we have to win the game.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of get it. Like you are slightly pressured for having Airy, but I don't know. Even if you didn't scale, you would never want to do this anyway. You know what I mean? Like this is an insane risk. Like you're so weak and you're giving up so much to do
So
this.
many waves. This is a disaster.
Yeah,
Like, this is end
yeah.
of review stuff, right? This is a disaster.
It is pretty punishing, yeah.
And that's all it takes, you know. Like, you know, there was pretty good, a lot of good stuff in here. I mean, you know, we talked about it could have been more aggressive in the lane and stuff, but stuff like that just makes your game so hard.
Yeah. Like all those little things do add up, but that was like a massive shot in the foot.
And you know, I guess maybe a narrative is like, well, you know, Shok, you know, I gotta roam and help my team, you know, like I gotta win the game, you know, like isn't that what the best laners do? They roam and like, you know, Faker roams on Galio and kills people at Worlds.
Yeah, you've just gotta be really careful when you roam. Like a good roam is very rewarding, but a bad roam is also very, very punishing. And I find most players do not know the difference between like good and bad roams. They just kind of just like run around, and it's super easy way to lose the game. Oh, this
Is
looks
this the same thing here? What's going on here? So there's a
yeah.
fresh
I
wave
would
coming.
say this
Zac's
is kind of
coming.
the same. I think
I don't know. Do you have to follow Zac here?
I would
Or you
say
just let them
no.
rot. You
I
just let
think
them
he
rot.
should be like literally like almost at Hui's turret. Just like it literally only takes like 3 or 4 seconds to kill this wave, and then you can
Yeah,
get to this fight. And like Zac
yeah.
will buy plenty of time. And I mean the problem is here, right? Like Hui again, despite Hui losing, like if you look at Hui's items, like Hui's items are pretty trash. He is actually stronger than Ori because like well, yeah, because he can just like come and get this massive flank, and then you know that's Yeah, I don't know. It's just
It's
like,
so sad. It looks so simple. It's so sad. It's so,
yeah,
you know,
if
it's just
you're
it's these roaming.
yeah, the way I like to think of it is like if you win the 1v1, you should never have even fights. Like it should always be
Mm.
3v2s or 4v3s or or they have to give up a wave in order to come or something, So like
But then people
what's
say
weird.
I can't accept that. Like it's like, well, Hawaii is gonna leave the tower. They don't care. Like they don't value Hawaii losing a wave as bad as like their team flaming them or whatever. Or
Yeah, yeah.
say, why did you not come? Maybe that's the narrative.
Possibly, yeah. I do think that like there honestly you will get flamed for this sometimes, and you've got to kind of just like accept that like it's pretty likely your teammates don't know what they're talking about either. Like I got flamed for this when I was doing unranked to challenger, but I also won so many games off my opponents just like randomly leaving lane and roaming, and
Hmm.
I suddenly have like a random like 2 plates, 2 waves lead, and then it's just over.
So yeah, the game definitely seems to be falling apart now. We've suddenly got a 5k gold lead from them, and I mean, a lot of it just came down to that dragon fight again, just bad roams. Like I feel like this Orianna had full control of this game, could have taken full responsibility and pinned down this way and just been way further ahead, and would be completely fine.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And then this, I mean, realistically, there's nothing you can do about that. Like that is just the product of you've itemized very greedily and you lost early game. Like if
Yeah.
you itemize like this and you won early game, then okay, like, everyone wouldn't be so fed and it wouldn't be a problem. But, at this point, I mean, like I said, that's just a free death. Like that's the reality of playing a mage versus 6 skill Evelyn. Like it's all the important stuff has already happened. So I don't know, like you could maybe win this game just from like a solid Jinx team fight or something. But I think playing the game from this point, you probably have like a 20% chance to win or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
Chick's
that's
getting
pretty good.
resets.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that could do it.
Okay.
Honestly, it feels like he is playing the fights pretty well. It's just like the knowing when not to roam, I guess, is what's really punishing him. Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
I
know.
feel like
This
this is
is
all very awkward here. Should we just be going back to a lane or something? Like, I guess this chase,
yeah, he
again,
probably
maybe
should
not
have.
valuing
I
pushing
think
waves,
yeah,
just
I think
one-shot the
quickly
wave.
QW the wave and
Yeah.
then probably just hit mid. Like right now, I think with Evelyn dead, now's a really good time to push waves and like try and take turrets and stuff because like you won't get another opportunity when Evelyn's alive. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Push
Like,
wave, roam bot, like hit
yeah,
this,
that
maybe hit
works
this out a
too.
little
I
bit,
think
go
just
right, just
like kill some
soak up some
creeps
farm.
somewhere, like rather
Yeah.
than, or at least QW the wave and then do this. Like, at least if you're not losing creeps, it's not so bad. But yeah, like you're actively losing CS the whole time. Like, yeah, holy fuck. And now someone else gets all that wave, which is really sad.
Yeah, so it's like we're running around playing like a Zed or something like that, or like a Kiana. Like we're not. This doesn't look like Orianna gameplay to me in like this mid game.
Yeah. I think also just like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's basically what you said. Like, you are, he's definitely running around too much. But the thing is, even on a champ like Ori, like, you can take lots of fights, but literally just spend the 3 seconds to shove the wave. It makes such a difference. Like, they lose creeps, someone has to answer, and you get like an extra 100 gold, And it really does not take long.
Yeah. So yeah, we got to shove waves and think about the next wave. Shove waves in. We got to prioritize that, and yeah, we're just making plays that just don't need to happen. We've got this weird idea. It looks like this player where it's like we have to win the game at like 12 minutes from some skirmish, from some roam, whatever. And I'm happy to lose 2 waves for it.
Yeah, I think so. This sort of situation here, I think a lot of people, they get to this spot and they're like, oh, like, how do I side lane as an immobile mage?
Yeah,
And
and the
like
answer
the
is you
answer
can't.
is you don't. Like
You
you
can't.
are
Yeah, the game's
fucked.
over.
There is
There's
nothing
no
you can
more
do
review.
now.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
no more
like
review.
you just had to not be in this spot to begin with.
Yeah. All right, Shok. Well, that's going to wrap up our Emerald player section here. Just a couple of questions before we finish off this this episode. So,
Sure.
obviously you're a really good Orianna player. You've hit really high rank over in Challenger, playing Orianna as well as your Cassiopeia. What advice would you give? Just that someone's really inspired, like, yes, I want to be like Shok's Orianna. I love the infinite skill cap idea of this champion. What advice would you give to people picking up this champion, like big 20%ers? What are the first things they should focus on with this champion to get results, like at the beginning?
Yeah, okay, so very first thing, I would just play a simple build, just play like Seraph, Leandry, Deathcap, Crippler, and go like Phase Rush, Gathering Storm, Precision. You pretty much can't go wrong with that. It'll be good in almost every game, and it's very easy to play. I'd say the next thing is really focus on just like trying to harass your opponent whenever they go to CS. You know, like it is kind of important for Ori to have at least some sort of lead. And the nice thing is that like Q is very cheap, both in terms of cooldown and mana, so you can spam it out. And then I guess like the one other thing would be don't neglect the side lane, like especially with the build I just told you, Ori is a very good side laner. You should beat most people in the side lane, and that's going to give you the golden XP to stay relevant. And yeah, I guess like when you get to team fights, like don't drop your ult too early. Like be a little patient with it. I think those are all the big things.
Going to the way you learned Orianna and your learning journey, I mean, obviously you're a very long-term player, Shok, playing for a long time, and you've played a lot of Orianna games. Can you remember when Orianna started clicking for you? Like, did you struggle to learn Orianna, or were you just like, you just picked it up, you was naturally talented, or you already had Challenger at that point by the time you started learning Ori and Pro Player or whatever?
I think I was already Challenger when I started learning Ori. So I maybe can't relate it to Ori specifically, but for me, a lot of champions they do take like roughly like 50 to 80 games to feel like to really get it, you know. I think there's two ways to like get much better to champ quick. One is to practice or like play against people that are good at it. So like if you're in the MLA or you know WTL whatever, you can play some 1v1s against someone that plays Ori, and then you'll kind of get what feels annoying or what feels tough to deal with when you land against an Ori. Another thing to do would be to watch some VODs looking for something specific. So, you want to see, okay, how do the Oriannas trade? How do they sideline? How do they team fight? Just open a VOD and just skip through it and look at those specific things. I find that most champs actually require less repetitions than you think, but most people are trying to like almost reinvent the wheel. They're trying to figure out, how do I play Ori rather than how does this guy play Ori and just copy it.
And our last question for you here, Shok. Act sort of as a salesman here. I want you to think about, okay, let's convince some people, maybe even MLA members, to pick up Orianna. How would you sort of like sell this champion? Like, you should play Orianna. What do you enjoy about Orianna? Why do you love this champion?
Okay, so I love Ori because you can play her in literally any game, any team comp, any matchup, and she's always going to be pretty solid. Like, if you just don't know what to pick, you can pick Ori. If you need a champ that, covers a bunch of holes in your champion pool, you pick Ori. So it's super well rounded, and it's also strong at like basically everything. Like you can side lane, you win lane, you're a great team fighter. Despite being mobile, like you've got mobility tools with phase rush and stuff. So it's just a quintessential mid champ. It almost never gets buffed or nerfed, which is great because you can just play her forever, and you're not worried about your champ just getting nerfed out of meta. So if you want like a long term investment for mid that's gonna pay off, like Orianna is your go to. This champ will literally never not be at least A tier.
Awesome. All right, Shok, wrapping up now. Final shout outs. Now, you coach a couple of times a week in the Mid Lane Academy.
Yep.
I assume you're already working with some Orianna students potentially. Shout outs. You stream on Twitch as well. What do you want to mention at the end of this?
Yeah, so currently I'm streaming Korean solo queue almost every day at 5 p.m. Korea time, which I think you can go convert it. I play most mid lane mages, and I'm currently 1200 LP Korean Challenger, so I'm getting quite a lot of famous players in my games a lot. So if you want to come check that out, you can. Twitch.tv/ShokLol. I also have YouTube, my main channel Shok, and Shok TV for the highlights. That's pretty much it. If you want more content of me, check out those places.
Yep, we'll chuck those links in the description of this video as well. All right, thanks again, Shok. We'll see you guys on our next episode.